Our manhwa opens in a world overwhelmed by a zombie apocalypse. These beasts are erasing all life with chilling precision, reducing everything to rubble and smoke. The focus turns to humanity's champion, Ji-hyuk, the feared demon of Daros. With conviction, he says the battle wasn't in vain, it had purpose. A tense man near him wonders aloud why Ji-hyuk always shows up at the worst moments. That man is Daros, the Grand Mage who once summoned Ji-hyuk into this realm. Ji-hyuk calmly replies, if he was summoned, then he must stay, at least to witness the war. Daros mutters that Ji-hyuk has already shown enough strength countless times. But the warrior is frustrated, reminding the mage that all of this started because of him. Daros stays silent, but Ji-hyuk presses on. What does enough even mean? He remembers drifting off peacefully at home before being hurled into an unfamiliar war. 3 decades on the battlefield, never knowing the cause or the enemy's face. To him, foes blurred into one. He fought for only one reason, to return. So he sided with anyone promising the fastest path back. Now he demands silence, no more talk, just action without delay. His eyes turn toward the zombie horde, and dread creeps in as he realizes they're the ones who toppled the Demon King. The mage is speechless, and Ji-hyuk's expression holds no triumph, only a void. He admits he had 4 hidden weapons ready, ones he would have used had he known the end was so near. With a sly grin, he glares at Daros and demands the oath be fulfilled. The king is no more. The scene cuts to Ji-hyuk basking in a pile of gold, and relishing every bit of his hard-won spoils. As he gazes at the glittering wealth, he mutters to himself, now he can finally live in peace. Back on Earth, he'll chase every dream, denying himself nothing. The mage announces that all is ready, the path home is open. He asks if the hero will leave immediately or linger for a while. The reply is sharp, there's nothing left for him here. Staying wouldn't bring joy to anyone. Daros tries to speak, but Ji-hyuk interrupts him coldly. He tells him to drop the formalities and quit stalling. He wants out now. The mage yields and agrees to do as told. He pulls out an artifact, a stone that distorts causality and rewinds time. That's why Ji-hyuk's body never aged, time itself had been halted. The warrior asks for confirmation. Will he return the moment the stone breaks? The mage nods, the stone's power is fading, and even a gentle strike will activate it. But the mage warns, once it's done, the laws of the world can't be defied. The cost will be severe. The warrior takes the artifact, paying no mind to the caution. Right before striking, he mutters, he never liked their company and doesn't want to see them again. He shatters the stone. Opening his eyes, he's stunned. Everything is different. He recognizes the surroundings. It's Earth. He's finally home. Overjoyed, he glances around, realizing he's free at last. He grabs a bag of chips and wonders what to buy first. Time and money mean nothing now. He is both in excess. He opens a magical portal, curious to examine what's happened to him. But his face twists, the portal is completely empty. He leans in, still clinging to hope. But nothing waits for him there. No treasure. No treasure. No zombies. No guns. Everything's vanished, even Tyro's so-called gifts. Anxiety swells. His mind fractures under the weight of loss. He remembers his first step into that alien realm, Sirhan. Frozen in place, stunned by a world he couldn't comprehend. The mage claimed it was the world of Siren, but he refused to believe it. He kept asking, where am I? What is this place? At first, survival was barely possible. The books all felt like madness. In the library, frustration surged. He hurled one book at Daros, shouting, I'm not reading this garbage. He recalls endless bloodshed, undead hordes, punishing marches. Years blended into a single moment. Now, Ji-hyuk feels hollow, burned from within. He bitterly realizes he has waited 30 years for this moment. To be deceived. He blames the mage and the people of Siren for stealing everything he deserves. With fury he screams, he didn't want words, but a reward, peace, a simple life. Suddenly he is interrupted by a strange sensation. Magic waves right here on Earth. It's absurd, but he feels them. A rift appears in the air, radiating a familiar energy. The guy rushes to the source. People are fleeing, gripped by panic. He sees something impossible, dragons. Flying monsters soar through the sky. He doesn't understand where they came from. A terrible thought creeps into his head. Daros has deceived him. Maybe this isn't Earth. Could it be another false world? Realizing the danger, the hero decides to get out of here. And then he notices a boy. The child falls before he can escape. One of the dragons is getting close. The boy freezes in horror and begins to cry. Ji-hyuk whispers he wasn't going to interfere, but he realizes he can't just stand there. Monsters deserve to be punished. Before he can move, a voice sounds behind him, ordering him to step back. The stranger chops the dragon in half, right in front of the boy, walks up to the child and tells him to find shelter. The guy looks at what's happening, not believing his eyes. An armed squad enters the battlefield. The commander gives the order to destroy the monsters. Some fighters fight with swords, others with bows and shields, like in the Middle Ages. The hero is shocked. Where do people on Earth get such powers? He notices the fighting style and magic are reminiscent of the knights from the planet Saron. One of the soldiers notices Ji-hyuk, signaling with a magic pulse. The enemy may be near. The guy remains motionless, as if everything around him is not his reality. A shell flies by. There's a huge explosion behind. And he just laughs. It's like none of this matters to him anymore. And then comes the realization, Daros. Ji-hyuk finally realizes he never went back to Earth. The scene shifts to Ji-hyuk's house, where he sits at his computer in a familiar setting as if everything is going his way. Immersed in thought, he finally concludes that this is still Earth, just slightly altered. It was as if the world had remained the same, except for the gate that had appeared. Huge flying monsters. And awakened people with new abilities. Tyro's phrase about cause and effect, spoken before parting on Saron, comes to mind. That seems unimportant now. More importantly, his peaceful life plan collapsed before it could begin. Grumbling irritably, he admits to himself, at his age, he'd like peace, not a race for survival. In theory, he could join the association, hunt and get rich, but there was no desire. Years of accumulated fatigue are taking their toll. In fact, he's well into his 60s, though you can't tell. He conceives of magic as a support and hopes that all the hard stuff will be done for him by obedient skeletons. The only worry is how those around them will perceive the undead walking alongside the living. Despite his doubts, he decides to go to the association, relying on chance and the weakness of the bureaucracy. When he appears, there is confusion in the audience. No one realizes who they are dealing with. Fortunately, everything goes quietly, without threats or unnecessary strife. He got lucky on his first day. One of the staff members wonders if he's controlling the skeletons, and the man mentally exhales in relief. The best outcome is that everyone assumed they were just summoned monsters and didn't question it. Then the questions come rushing in. How many can call? What is the limit? What is the level of control? He feels overwhelmed, but asks for a moment of respite to get his thoughts in order. Begins to explain that he doesn't know the exact limitations yet. Later skeletons will be stored in the portal. They ask him if you can store things there, to which he replies, only skeletons, nothing more. Distrustful employees start throwing objects at it, but the portal simply rejects them. He tiredly explains that the system only lets through what is acceptable, everything else it ignores. His explanation is accepted, albeit with apologies. Too often they have encountered scammers. One of the scientists picks up a bat, and with a look makes it clear, it's fight test time. An ominous aura emanates from the skeleton, but the host immediately suppresses it before anyone senses anything. The opponent who volunteered for the check easily destroys the skeleton. Then, surprised, shrugs. He admits, he expected more, but the test is over. Now all that's left is to determine the rank. The boy hesitates for a moment whether to eavesdrop on the conversations behind his back, but he doesn't hold back. He picks up lines, a skill strange, new, but essentially not understood. There's also talk of poor control, and the fact that skeletons are helpless in combat, to say the least. The last thing he hears is a sneer, rank F, and no one seems to be about to argue. Later, he does get a card with an F on it, but reacts calmly, without irritation. He puts it in his pocket and decides it's time to earn money, because he has to live somehow. He is headed to a dungeon where he will hunt differently, not like a normal necromancer. Unlike the others, he doesn't depend on mana or will. He has almost unlimited skeletons. At one point, one of the skeletons finds himself surrounded by a strange golem, which is clearly nervous. The golem suddenly releases a green slurry. And it goes straight into the poor man's skull, starting to eat away at the bone. Ji-hyuk quickly pulls himself together and reacts coherently without unnecessary panic. He activates the magic circles and starts a chain of commands, all calculated in advance. If the attack is repeated, evasion number 6, if it doesn't work, maneuver 7, 8, and then protocol 11. And at the very least, attack strategy 17, because every step is pre-programmed. The system relies on built-in algorithms. The skeletons act independently according to given conditions. This gives freedom, removes the need for manual control, and allows you to expand your army. He even chuckles. It all reminds him of the programming he once escaped from. There were bugs, teams clashed, it was chaos. But decades of editing on Cerrone have done their job. Now everything works like clockwork. He recalls that he could have lived a peaceful life if that system had survived, all thanks to Tyros. When he comes out of his memories, he recognizes that it's useless to complain. He has to build it all over again. He checks his phone. It's been 4 hours. It's time to end this dungeon. When he comes out of the portal, he's already being waited on. The crowd is confused. He looks too out of place. He appears with an army of skeletons, but many immediately realize their strength is not enough. They find an explanation for his F ranking in this, and it's hard to argue with that. A satisfied hunter comes up to him. He's succeeding today too, clearly happy. The man shares his successes and proceeds to calculate Ji-hyuk's earnings. He asks to round up the amount. He hasn't killed anyone personally. There's no need to count the small things. But the interlocutor insists, counting every coin, ignoring his words. After receiving his payment, Ji-hyuk looks at his phone screen. The road to retirement, alas, is still a long way off. Hunter thanks for the cooperation and says he's always willing to help more. He thinks that everything is going well so far. The low rank gives him the necessary shadow. A high rank would attract unnecessary attention, and it must be avoided at all costs. He decides that he needs to wait a bit, finalize the system, and then everything will work itself out. There are whispers behind him. They are discussing how lucky he is, because he doesn't need porters at all. One wonders how many corpses he can pull out in a day. The other offers to take him into the group. But in other objects, draft picks are hard to deal with. They rarely interact as a team. The conversation breaks off. Someone calls their name, and everyone freezes. They realize with horror that it's Ji-hyuk, and instantly tense up. One of them hurriedly apologizes, saying that they were just talking, not out of malice. The man only grins, assuring him that he holds no grudges, and then asks about the porter. Confused, they crumple, saying they haven't had time to find one yet. With a broad smile, he offers them a new. And the first job will be absolutely free. The two hunters don't hesitate to join Ji-hyuk to go down into the dungeon and start hunting monsters. They each employ unique skills, and soon the team is collecting a decent amount of trophies and artifacts. When everything is packed up, the hunters remind the man of a strange idea he once mentioned in passing. In response, he pulls a strange horse-shaped skeleton out of his bag, equipped with a carrying compartment. He says it's just a test model that needs to be refined, but the goal is to make them into porters. Hyuk explains that these skeletons have many perks. They don't get tired, don't require food, and never complain. He adds that it costs 30,000 won an hour to rent, and one such skeleton replaces 3 workers at once. The hunters hesitate. The offer seems suspiciously lucrative. A skeleton is cheaper than paying a living wage. Eventually they accept the man's terms, and Hyuk brightens. Their agreement inspires him. He even offers them a discount in gratitude for their trust. They joke that he has more business since than the average awakened, and he doesn't deny it. He just smiles and adds that being a businessman is actually much easier than it looks from the outside. The scene changes. Now he's sitting in the shadows, and there's a line of awakened waiting to rent skeletons in front of him. He smirks and whispers to himself that earning effortless money is the real goal of any job. Among those standing there is a girl maintaining order and supervising the issuance of skeletons to other hunters. To understand who she is and how she ended up with Ji-hyuk, you have to go back in time to where it all began. One day, while checking the bone carrier system in the dungeon, he suddenly felt a growing boredom and fatigue. He promised himself, when the system worked, he would leave the dungeons for good and never come back here again. At that moment, he noticed a motionless body in the distance, causing an uneasy feeling of foreboding and inner protest. He decided the man was long dead and walked on by, deeming the intervention a waste of time and effort. To his skeletons, he ordered them not to react to the corpse and to keep moving, ignoring it. However, the skeletons suddenly stopped and refused to carry out the order, as if sympathizing with the dead woman. This surprised Ji-hyuk. He decided that he had taught them empathy, not on purpose, but just by his attitude towards everything that was going on. Seeing no other option, he reanimated the body as a zombie. He just needed someone to stand in line. At the same time, he was interested, who she was, what happened to her, and why she died in this particular place. As he delved into her memories, he saw how her family was in dire need of support and help. Her brother asked her to take it easy and offered to find a part-time job, but she refused. He was still studying. She insisted that as an awakened, she was capable of earning her own money and protecting her loved ones from want. After finishing watching, he informs her that her income will now go to the family so that they can survive. He believes this is the best outcome, to remain useful and not leave his family in distress and without support. Afterward, he tries to figure out exactly how she died and goes back to her last memories. It turns out, she was badly injured and sought help from another awakened, but he refused. He accused her of being stupid and said he didn't have to save everyone who couldn't make it on their own. When the second awakened asked what to do, he suggested we just let her die and move on. They left, ignoring her pleas and leaving the girl in the dungeon with no help or hope of rescue. Back in reality, Ji-hyuk completes the appeal, realizing that she was a victim of indifference. He advises her to be careful and not to trust those who are capable of betrayal at the worst possible moment. Calling her by name, he informs her that she was an F-class awakened and is now his assistant. However, she doesn't recognize him and seems confused, as if her consciousness hasn't fully returned yet. So Saya becomes part of his team, and Hyuk is satisfied. Everything is working out as it should, and the girl's agility is already generating income almost effortlessly. His only concern is for those who condemned Saya to death and threw her into the dungeon. He ponders whether to deal with it, but decides to postpone it. It's too tedious to get into other people's business. Later, he notices an oddity. Not all the skeletons have made it into the dungeon, as if something has interfered with them. It makes him wonder, perhaps the dungeon itself limits the number of creatures entering inside. He ponders whether to leave Say's place and move to another neighborhood to open up new opportunities. But then decides to just observe for now and not rush the change. He calmly gets up from his seat and heads for the restroom. The scene changes. Now the three porters are standing away from the gate where Ji-hyuk is working. Their faces are grim. They are worried, as if they have lost something important and don't know what to do next. One of the girls notices that now everyone only rents skeletons and no one wants humans anymore. The guy suggests looking for another aisle where you can still get settled and stay in business. But Chansu objects. There are simply no other gates nearby, and it's too far to go any further. He suddenly offers to approach Ji-hyuk with a request, because the latter doesn't seem angry or ruthless. The girl asks what exactly he's going to ask for, suspecting it might all be a trap. Chansu explains he wants to persuade the man to cut back on rent or reduce the intensity of the work. She doubts that he'll go along with it, since it's all a lucrative and growing business. He notes, even after renting all of Ji-hyuk's skeletons remain vacant, he can expand the business. That means it's ready to go beyond that gate and sweep the market across the region. Chansu sighed heavily. He was tired of the perpetual running, asking how much longer he could retreat. At that moment, he overhears the hunters discussing Ji-hyuk with interest and bewilderment. Kim Young laughs. That guy seems to defy logic already and acts weird, as if without a plan. He clarifies, isn't that the awakened one from F-class that uses some minions instead of porters? His friend warns, do not provoke other awakened, even if they seem weak. Kim Young assures that he's not stupid. He didn't come alone, but with a team ready to intervene in case of conflict. He reaches out to Chance and his friends, suggesting that they team up and force Hyuk out of this market. The girl remarks, to do that, we'll have to lower the price to 10,000 won, and then there's no point in working. She emphasizes it was Ji-hyuk who disrupted the old order and destroyed the wage labor market. The guy agrees with her, but offers to at least try to negotiate with him directly. However, his friend doesn't believe in success and decides to leave with Kim Young, saying they have no other choice. Before he leaves, he tells Chance, if he changes his mind, have him find them, they'll take him back. A shadow of sadness appears on Changsu's face. He feels that everything that is happening is incredibly unfair. He breathes heavily, unsure of what to do, and wonders if he should warn Hyuk of the danger. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice behind him. It's Ji-hyuk, and Chansu flinches in surprise. The man smiles and says he admires his resilience and the fact that he's not afraid to step up to the plate. Changsu, sensing the tension, anxiously asked if Ji-hyuk had heard everything. The uneasiness increased when he coldly confirmed. Every word reached him. He remarked with annoyance, hating the attempts to trap him. He added with a chuckle, he wanted to teach everyone a lesson, but new circumstances changed his plan. Looking at Jang-soo, Ji-hyuk admitted, the guy's speech had hurt him, awakening strange but important thoughts. He suddenly offered a job. He's going to expand the business, pays generously. Chang-soo rejoiced and promised if it worked out, even the porters would return. Ji-hyuk laughed. He'd been thinking about it for a long time and considered a better solution than the previous ones. But he immediately became serious. It's not about those who followed Kim Young for profit. Cold sweat rolled down Chang-soo's face. He realized that the man's suspicions were not unfounded. The boy hastily justified his friends. They were not driven by greed, but by need, poverty, fear. He assured them that if he had talked to them, they would have agreed without hesitation. Ji-hyuk sighed. He rarely forgives, but he knows that poverty distorts even the honest. He gave them a chance for Chang-soo's sake, who, despite his fear, stood up for the others, but made a condition, as long as the boy persuaded them, to keep everything secret. Ji-hyuk said, if they believe and come, it will be a sign of living loyalty. He emphasized that he doesn't value pretty words, but loyalty. Then he asked if Jang-soo could handle it. The guy didn't hesitate. He promised that he would do everything possible to get his comrades back. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Kim Young. He gathered people and met with the awakened one. The one reported, everything is ready. You can start implementing the risky but precise plan. One of Chang-soo's friends remarked with a chuckle, a cheerleader is only one person. He turned out to be an E-class awakened named Kim Young, a not too formidable figure. He addressed the crowd, but there was a disturbing silence in response. Some tried to cheer up. Even an F-class can be handled if you work cohesively. Kim Young explained the purpose. They have to confront the actions of a man named Ji-hyuk. He stated, checked out the Ji-hyuk skeletons. They are fast, cheap, don't get tired, don't require food. Because of them, the awakened no longer need live porters. He put his hand on Kim Young's shoulder, said it was personal to him. Kim Young had once worked for him and helped him keep a steady income. Now he is obliged to help, because one does not abandon those who were there at the right moment. The bearers agreed. They don't want conflict. They want a chance to live honestly. With a smile, Kim Young began to tell the plan, to wait for Ji-hyuk to return home. Make him summon skeletons. And then attack. Make it look like self-defense. If it goes clean, it's Ji-hyuk's fault. They'll stay clean. But then he said, his commission is bigger, now not 15%, but 25%. The risks have increased, and he wants to be paid accordingly. Kim Young was indignant. It used to be different. They had agreements. Kim Young hummed. Did anyone really think he would work at a loss? If they don't, he'll sell everything to Ji-hyuk himself. He has ways to make money. Kim Young could hardly contain his anger. He had no choice but to agree. Kim Young praised him for his responsibility and told him the time of the next meeting. After he left, the porters surrounded Kim Young with recriminations and anger. They complained. Under these conditions, there would be nothing left. The deductibles would eat it all up. Kim Young didn't hold back, blaming Ji-hyuk's business for them being backed into a corner. Shouting, if someone wants to leave, let them leave. One won't last a day. Suddenly, Chang-soo appeared. He calmly asked everyone not to do anything stupid and to listen. Kim Young exploded. Why did he come back? Did he betray them and go to the enemy? Jang-soo replied. He saw them and came to tell the news from Ji-hyuk. These words only spurred and enraged Kim Young on. He accused Jang-soo of cheating on him. The guy didn't give in. He asked to listen and not to yell. He told me he asked Ji-hyuk to give them a chance, and he got it. He can't even handle an army of skeletons without help, and he's willing to cooperate. Kim Young demanded details. Jang-soo hesitated, which caused a new surge of disbelief. Kim Young said he doesn't believe the words, and he doesn't blame it. Faith doesn't save you from starvation. Jang-soo admitted he couldn't tell everything yet, but he insisted that Ji-hyuk was not the enemy. He asked for trust. After all, he stayed with them when others left in a difficult moment. The bearers thought for a moment. One said Chang-soo had earned their trust by helping them in their time of need. Despite Kim Young's entreaties, they sided with the guy. They apologized for leaving and decided to come back. Chang-soo glowed with joy. Now they were going together without repeating old mistakes. Kim Young shouted after them. If he won, there would be no room for them. Meanwhile, the scene returns to Ji-hyuk. He closed the shop and went with Sia. They were picking out dinner. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. It was Kim Young. He asked if he had colluded with the porters. Kim Young was furious. He thought that Jang Soo had given everything away and betrayed them. Ji Hyuk laughed. What made him think it was Jang Soo? He explained that he'd just asked for a temporary job. No strings attached, no strings attached. Kim Young was shocked. Everything was happening behind his back, beyond his control. Ji Hyuk shrugged. He didn't care. He activated the magic circle. Before, he wanted to play. Now, he had to act quickly for the future. The magic shackled Kim Young's body in chains, instantly, without a chance for resistance. He saw the people hiding and told them to come out. Chains pulled everyone out of the shadows. Looking at Kim Young, he said, "It smells like blood and real trouble in here now." He moved closer and acknowledged, didn't recognize him at once, but now he remembered. Kim Young gave C a lot of trouble back then. Ji Hyuk grinned. He didn't want to fight, but since he had come, it would be fun and without mercy. Ji Hyuk's eyes flashed with scarlet light. His lips curved into a frightening grin as he made it clear that oppressing honest workers would not be tolerated. He equated Kim Young to a scumbag from the back alley, attacking the weak from around the corner. Kim Young, not realizing who he was facing, exhaled a question in confusion. In response, a blow knocked him to the ground. The man threw his enemy to the ground like a sack of garbage. He said, "He crossed the line, and he will pay for it." An army of skeletons rose at his call. He swore it would never happen again. The skeletons began to stiffen Kim Young's body. The punishment had come. Inside Ji Hyuk, a stiffness matures. We must strike so that no one else dares. The beating was accompanied by the cracking of bones. The enemy became a living lesson. Now he is an embodied warning to all who would dare to do the same. When it was over, Ji Hyuk turned to Xie, revenge complete. He added, being magnanimous, he only tweaked the faces and let the others go. When the enemies had learned their lesson, Chang Su and his comrades approached. They thanked him. He replied that he was just looking for such helpers. Chang Su asked what had become of those who had left. The man explained with a sly smile, just having a conversation, reminding him of his mistakes. He suggested leaving the past behind and focusing on the present. Work awaits. He announced the rate, 25,001 per hour, more than generous. And he added, the work will be forever, endless. A magical portal opened, and a six-legged skeleton emerged from it. It was a new development, a skeleton machine transporting people inside. Now work will be easier, faster, more efficient. The effort will pay off. Chang Su and the others were stunned, standing with their mouths open. The scene changed. In another part of the country, the awakened were discussing rumors. One mentioned, in a neighboring town, skeletons carry cargo, convenient. Another confirmed it. They even go there specifically for it. The curious awakened man wanted to see for himself. He heard a voice nearby, as if from nowhere. In front of him is a girl in a chair held by skeletons. She explained, her team is her and two skeletons. Rent is 120,001 per hour. The awakened were shocked and hurried to clarify, could only skeletons be rented without her? She said no, the team doesn't share, otherwise the system breaks down. An argument started. Is it worth paying for an extra team member? One commented, the price is adequate and curiosity will be quenched. Decided to give it a try. The girl was happy and promised, they won't regret it. They went to the dungeon. Fought together. The team worked perfectly. When the girl collected the corpses, told not to stand, to move on. Skeletons can carry their prey on the move. No need to stop. The awakened man was delighted. The time saving was amazing. Suddenly, a monster appeared. The girl reacted instantly. The fighters stood in front of her like a shield, shielding her from the blow. The attack faltered. The defenses went down. The awakened recognized. Now it is not terrible to trust people to protect the porter. After the fight, the girl promised to quickly collect the corpses. When asked, where did the things already collected go? She answered, everything was sorted automatically, right in the battle. He was impressed and offered to work together again. She happily agreed and added, booking in advance is possible, even necessary. The scene changed. Ji Hyuk was standing next to Sei, deep in thought. He realized that the skeletons had reached the shadow market, but he was worried that this was just the beginning. He remembered the planet's own. The people didn't accept skeletons right away. He used to emphasize the cargo once. They didn't cause fear. Now he wanted to produce thousands of them for profit and influence. But he realized that attention to him would increase, and so would the risk. A mere summoner couldn't summon more than 10. He already had more than that. He knew it was dangerous. And if he didn't stop, trouble would come. There was even the thought of quitting. He looked at Saya. She was on her cell phone, like it was none of her business. He took the device from her to see what she was so fascinated by. Turns out she's watching videos of handsome Korean boys. He is drowning in business, while she is having fun without a care in the world. He thought about the price of success. He had money, but no freedom. The guy dreamed of just leaving to live quietly, without noise. But even in the shadows, too much revenue attracts attention. He decided that if he was going to shine, he was going to shine big. He immediately called Puck, his manager, to inform him of the new plan. The man said he intends to double his purchases of bones. Now the plans have doubled. Park was surprised and asked exactly how much it would take. Then Ji-hyuk opened the banking app. He said he was going to invest 32 million won, which is the amount needed to realize the idea. The manager didn't hide his surprise, but the man explained that it was just a reinvestment of all income, no secrets. He asked Puck to handle the purchasing, and he promised to find the best bones on the market. The conversation was over, and the man felt the weight off his shoulders a little lighter. All such matters were now on Puck. He thought of a large warehouse that could be rented, where skeletons could be produced on an industrial scale. The dream seemed close at hand. However, the man is suddenly struck with a fresh idea. He decides that there is no need to summon the skeletons separately every day, if he can summon them all at once. Gate control, awakened registration. Director Yun Sung-hoon wonders if something noteworthy has happened. The researcher finds nothing special, but mentions one incident that did catch his eye. It features one Ji-hyuk, an awakened man who summons transport skeletons. At last count, he had called on 32 units in a month. Director Jong is a bit stunned. Why is a report like this only surfacing now? The researcher explains, rumors of the company's creation of Siren have only recently reached us, and just today is the day of its unveiling. As he penetrates, Young remarks to himself, thin skeletons seem to be weak, but in skillful hands they have become weapons, and if he opens a firm, then he is certainly not poor. Continuing the report, the researcher elaborates, Ji-hyuk's income can be measured in billions of won per month. And therefore, given the excessive volume of appeals, he suggested that it be removed from the special observation category. Another employee bursts into the office, agitated to the extreme. His voice shakes as he tries to deliver the latest news to the principal. The director, expecting to hear a continuation of the story about the skeletons, nods. He knows, he just found out. But the man hastens to dissuade. It's not that at all. It turns out that Han Ji-hyuk had summoned a huge number of transporters recently and distributed them completely chaotically. Hearing this, Director Jong only shakes his head. 32 skeletons is far from the limit, and it looks like a new record has been set. The first of the researchers intervenes. A month ago he called 27. He insists it is necessary to continue surveillance, to keep him under control. But the other objected sharply, angrily slapping the table with the palm of his hand. Jan wonders how many are summoned this time to cause such a commotion. The answer sounded strange, not 30, and not 62. It turned out that 300 had been called up, and those were just the ones we were able to spot. After that, everyone, including Young Sun himself, immediately heads to Siren's headquarters. As soon as the car comes to a stop, the director freezes. In front of his eyes, hundreds of skeletons filled everything around him. The researcher, having completed the inspection, confirms the number of skeletons already exceeds 3,500. Jan demands to know where Han Ji-hyuk is and gets the answer, in the hangar. They're going inside the hangar. Inside it turns out to be even more appealing. The man notices the guests and gestures for the workers to take a break. It's lunchtime. He approaches Principal Kong and, handing over the card, suggests we celebrate the first task with a holiday table. Afterwards, he turns to Jan and clarifies his affiliation, suspecting that he is a representative of the department. Upon identifying himself, he says his name, Han Ji-hyuk. One of the examiners comes closer, reminding him that he was the one who did his exam review. Ji-hyuk doesn't deny it. The face is familiar. At that moment, the researcher's gaze falls on the girl next to him, and he raises his eyebrows interestedly. The man explains, it's a cousin named Sia, come to help at the launch. With a friendly nod to the girl, the researcher gets back to business, wondering if all those skeletons are really genuine summonses. Ji-hyuk confirms without a doubt. The count is more than 350 units. The man agrees that the count is probably correct. But suspicion is already in the air. Did he really lie on the exam? Categorically, Ji-hyuk dismisses the thought. He himself couldn't have predicted what he'd turn out to be capable of. Director Yun intervenes with a determined voice. All of this must stop. Even 100 skeletons is something, and 350 is beyond the realm of possibility, especially for an awakened F-class. But the man won't back down. Why should he stop? In the opponent's opinion, the situation only seems alarming. He goes on to explain that when setting up the company, he consulted a lawyer and took into account all legal provisions. The law does not limit the number of appeals in any way. Director Jong emphasizes safety. Ji-hyuk replies, the skeletons were the same as before. No objections then. Why did they appear now? Quietly, barely audible, Young asks his subordinate if there is any reason to intervene. Toth discreetly admits. The scale of such a thing was simply not considered in the law. Ji-hyuk is not lost. The company is legal. He refers to a special law that allows leasing abilities. Once faced with the fact, employees are unable to do anything to counteract it. The law is on the side of the conscript. His arguments are impeccable. All they have to do is walk away. Turning back to Sia, the man notes with satisfaction, it was the right decision to launch everything at once. If he'd acted gradually, there would have been people who would have wanted to get in the way. But when confronted with something beyond comprehension, they're lost, not knowing what to do. And now he's wondering if he should keep it up. Maybe we should call in 300 every day. What if we saved up a couple thousand and let them all out at once? No law would stand up to that. Encouraged by the idea, he's going to start right away. But suddenly fatigue grips the body, motivation evaporates. Yes, I managed to get to 1,000, but I have no desire to continue. The media is full of headlines about an awakened man controlling 500 skeletons. But the man is unaffected by this. There is only one thing on his mind. He doesn't want to work. He recalls how at first he was burning with the idea of his own company. However, maintaining 300 every day is hard. He notes with a chuckle, he dreamed of retiring so he wouldn't have to work. But now he has to work twice as hard to achieve peace. Boredom and fatigue fill the day when a knock on the door is heard. An agitated Director Kong appears in front of him. Ji-hyuk is already trying to hide under the table to avoid being touched. He informs her that there is a serious conflict brewing outside the building. Ji-hyuk is worried. What's the reason? It turns out that the mass protest was organized by movers from other regions. When he hears about it, he immediately gives orders. Frustration erupted over the damage caused by the skeletal transporters. The Awakened recognized them as more profitable and convenient, displacing living workers entirely. Complaints were pouring in one after another, automation was crowding them out already, and now the appeals were leaving them without a piece of bread. They had to go to remote places in order to make a living. Siren's company is accused of destroying jobs. And the demands were clear. The head of the firm, Han Ji-hyuk, must hear them. Appearing before the gathered crowd, the man did not argue. Respectfully, he acknowledged their concerns and invited them inside for a quiet dialogue. In the meeting room, the young entrepreneur admitted anxiety related to the layoffs and gestured for everyone to speak plainly. The leader of the protesters calmly reminded us how quickly the number of skeleton loaders is growing and how orders from live porters are plummeting. He added bitterly that many had to leave the city. There were no more jobs left locally. Even the occasional part-time job no longer saves the day. Skeletons are too lucrative, you can't keep up with the living. The summoner mentally calculated. One skeleton replaces 6. 250 is 1,500. And 1,000? That's over 3,000 unemployed. That number hurt more than he'd expected. It was impossible to continue. He decided to stop. To restore the balance, promised to equalize the prices of skeletons with the prices of ordinary movers. This decision was made quietly. The protesters nodded silently, they agreed. He told me to prepare a written agreement. Kong immediately rushed to carry out the order. There was genuine joy on Kong's face. Everything went well, no conflict, no loud words. Looking at his superior, he felt respect. The ability to retreat is also strength. The scene is changed to the warden's office. The head of Soren cut back on the project and started looking for a new way to make money. Unharmed, calm, steady. He remembered Khan's words about the kindness of a superior. and sighed heavily. Bad luck holds, won't let go. Ideas were popping up in the notebook. But my eye was suddenly caught on a trifle, a random detail. The plastic handle clearly showed, made in China. The same inscription was on the cover of the notebook. And on my favorite mug, it's all from the same place. The realization came abruptly, like a blow. There is no need to invent new things if you can replace the old. What if we do what is being imported en masse now? It would be easier to compete. A few days later, in an old shoe factory near Siren, Director Kim Dae-ok was once again in a troubled state of mind. The family business was fading. Chinese prices were killing even the excellent quality. He was racking his brains, how to survive, cover costs, keep at least some of the team. A secretary burst into the office, excited. Almost screaming, gasping, rumors of Siren and skeletons spread quickly. Kim only sighed. He'd heard. And he would have liked to, too. Ability was more important than skill these days. But then a calm voice sounded. There was a man standing at the door. He called himself Ji-hyuk. He said he was interested in the factory. Wants to take a look at it. Maybe buy it. Kim's eyes flashed. This was an opportunity that couldn't be missed. He immediately agreed. He took the guest around the workshops and started explaining. It's not about profit. It's about people. All he could think about was how he was going to sell his unprofitable business. First, as he showed, the parts are cut out on machines in a distant workshop. Then they are stitched together on machines. The machinery fails, but the workers' hands are precise. Ji-hyuk noticed. The equipment is old. Kim awkwardly confirmed. Yes, but the craftsmen correct the mistakes of the technicians. Machines break down more often than they appear. The guest nodded. Live labor is more expensive than one thinks. Then they walked to the assembly hall, where everything is put together into the finished shoe. The process looked simple, but in reality required precision and consistency. Ji-hyuk glanced at Shay. The work seemed manageable. It was easier than brewing armor or sharpening blades. He asked, is everything done manually? Is there even partial automation? Kim explained that cutting can be done by machine, but sewing and assembling can only be done by hand. He added, right now he only has 20 men. We need at least 5 times as many. 100 is a reasonable number. The entrepreneur agreed. What about sales? Kim said they work to orders. The customer names a model. The factory adapts it to the request. What if we sew for spare time? Ji-hyuk asked. Can we sell the finished batches? There is a risk, Kim admitted. If they don't guess the demand, they will be left with the goods and losses. It is difficult for small factories to forecast. There are no resources to assess the market. The honest answer elicited a smile. A short laugh broke out in the workshop. Kim grinned, too. He had nothing to hide. What if we made a cheap batch? Sell it for export? Use the available labor? It's too complicated. Brands want both price, speed, and logistics. Automation is not always a plus. But Ji-hyuk was waiting for a straight answer. Can we or can't we? Kim nodded. If the product is cheap and of good quality, you can sell it. The solution was born immediately. The factory was passing into new hands. The contract is signed. It's clear, no words needed. Kim almost wept. He was retained as director. The whole team was retained. He thanked me profusely. He promised he wouldn't let you down. He'd find orders. Revitalize the shop. The answer was brief. There is no need for gratitude. The main thing is to start work as soon as possible. Soon the newcomers entered the workshop. Skeletons. Silent, but reliable. The summoner introduced them. These ones would work without complaint, without a break, without sleep. The only request is to teach, to pass on the skill. Kim's voice trembled. He exhaled. The man in front of him was not a man. He was facing an angel. The skeletons immediately joined the process. It's like they were born in this workshop. Director Kim gives the necessary orders, and the bustling excitement in the factory is a reminder of better times. The man is surprised. It's been a long time since the enterprise breathed with such vigor, and believes that the credit goes to the new owner. But the young master only brushes it off. Things only got better thanks to Kim's own skill and persistence. The senior director nods. At first he was completely shocked, because he couldn't imagine skeletons at the machines. An elderly man hesitantly asks if it's legal at all. Ji-hyuk calmly explains that they are not breaking any laws. Everything is within the bounds of what is permissible. Word by word, the conversation flows smoothly into business. The general offers to inspect the first batch of shoes and make a judgment about their quality. The director takes the shoe, turns it in his hands. The result is beyond expectations. But it's still a long way from the handmade level, in his opinion. Ji-hyuk doesn't shy away from criticism. He asks to speak directly and honestly about what exactly needs to be refined. The man points out a weak line where there is a lack of density and there are omissions. Guy instantly delivers new instructions to the skeletons and soon returns with an improved model. Kim checks the result again and agrees. Things have gotten an order of magnitude better. The young entrepreneur is satisfied. If he continues to learn from his mistakes, there will soon be a stable demand. Moreover, the skeletons do not need to be paid for labor, which means that costs are greatly reduced. The director agrees. With such savings, it is possible to compete even with Chinese exports. If they strengthen their reputation, it will be possible to enter OEM contracts with major global brands. Ji-hyuk raises an eyebrow, not hiding his surprise. He thought brands produced everything themselves. Kim explains, well-known brands focus on design and marketing and outsource the rest. The guy is shocked. He didn't expect the production to work like this. Meanwhile, work at the Siren Shoes factory has been non-stop, with orders continuing unabated. The company buys out several shoe factories, expanding the network. And Ji-hyuk is working without a day off. One night, after a particularly hard day, the guy comes home, exhausted and dreaming of a vacation. But a call shatters the silence. Director Kim apologizes for the late hour, talking about a new urgent order. The equipment needs to be reconfigured immediately, and Ji-hyuk doesn't hesitate to agree to return. The older man admits that he reported too late. The previous order is almost complete. The young entrepreneur realizes the workload is growing, and it's not just affecting him. He thinks, maybe you should train Sia to share some of the tasks. But there's no time. Learning will take up energy and resources that are in short supply right now. Increasing the number of skeletons is not easy either. There are fewer and fewer suitable bodies. In addition, increasing the number of skeletons can attract attention, which is a reputational risk. The basic circuit work is not yet complete. The modules are not ready. Everything requires care. And that's when an idea pops into my head. Brand new, fresh as the morning wind, macros. That's right, he's a programmer. A few days later, there is an interview day at the factory. Among the contenders is Baek Sang-ho. Ji-hyuk motions for the young man to sit down and picks up the resume. Experience: only part-time work, no technical knowledge. Guy asks if he has any special skills, maybe informal. Sang-ho crumples, nervous, not knowing what to say. Everything seems inappropriate. But then, as if making up his mind, he blurts out, he's good at video games. He himself can't believe he said it. Embarrassment colors his face. He almost regrets the words. The guy wonders what exactly he's good at. And Sang-ho answers reluctantly, with doubt in his voice. Plays everything, and is always on top, especially likes simulators and building projects. When asked for proof, he pulls out a video and starts explaining. The game is about assembling golems. The machine he assembled flies. The combination of parts proved effective. Under the fan there is an engine assembled from his hand, powerful, with high thrust. Young explains, the physics in the game are realistic, and had to rethink the purpose of each element. It required ingenuity. The standard ways didn't work. Doubts again overwhelmed the young man. Should he look for something simpler? But at that moment, Ji-hyuk announces with sudden determination that he has been accepted. The boy asks if Sang-ho will be able to start tomorrow. The young man shines with joy and thanks fervently, not hiding his emotions. The first day's a struggle. There's a skeletal construct in front of him, and he can't understand it. Ji-hyuk explains, it's like a computer, only weird and complicated. The man shows the control box and levers. Every movement here counts. Explains that if you pull the lever, the skeleton will replicate his movement. In the future, Sang-ho will have to make a program of gymnastic movements. It takes a week to complete the task. The young man is confused, but agrees. The remote resembles a gamepad, but inside are the remains of a mage capable of simple enchantments. The panel with levers and buttons looks chaotic. The rush of assembly has had its effect. Despite everything, Ji-hyuk is thrilled. Sang-ho makes it 2 days ahead of schedule. His choice turned out to be the right one, and the guy realizes it. The man asks to share his impressions and point out weaknesses in the design. Encouraged, Sang-ho eagerly begins to list what could be improved. But Ji-hyuk has to interrupt him. It's not time for modernization. He explains, the boy will be the company's first programmer. and there are high hopes for him. As soon as the newcomers arrive, Sang-ho will be their mentor. It's worth preparing. The young man is deeply touched. Thanks from the bottom of his heart. The man reports he is already promoted and his salary will increase. Sang-ho is shocked, barely holding back tears, vowing to work as hard as he can. He's worried so much that he can't hide his emotions. Ji-hyuk gently reassures him. The important thing is for everyone to do their best. Although in the back of his mind the guy never ceases to wonder why young people have such violent reactions. The next day, Ji-hyuk received a call from the registration office. They asked about the status of the factory. He confidently replied that everything was going great, but he wasn't expecting the next question about skeletons. The man confirmed without hesitation that he was using skeletons and immediately asked if there were any problems. The caller hurriedly assured him that everything was fine, at which point Ji-hyuk abruptly cut the conversation short, emphasizing that calls of this nature were only acceptable when there was a serious threat. Later, Director Kim asked who had called, and he explained that it was the head of the office. He likes to get in the way over nothing. Ji-hyuk waved it off, telling him not to pay attention, and asked how Sang-ho was doing, if he'd been able to get on board. Kim replied with restraint. Sang-ho had a hard time at first. He even ruined a few pairs of shoes. But after a while the guy got used to it, got involved, and started to show good results in production. Ji-hyuk nodded satisfactorily and suggested hiring another programmer, since Sang-ho was already in the ranks. Kim approved of the idea and promised to place the ad right away without delaying the search process. Ji-hyuk then clarified the status of the stock of materials in the warehouse. Kim explained that there are still resources available, but we need to prepare for procurement. The scale is growing faster than forecast. He added that rumors about the factory have started to spread strongly and demand could increase dramatically. Ji-hyuk wondered if it was time to take orders from big brands since growth was so rapid. Kim faltered a bit and reminded him that it had only been a month since he'd bought the factory, too little time. But Ji-hyuk didn't want to wait. His character didn't allow for procrastination. He was eager to advance quickly. Kim assured that he will do his best to reach out to the big companies and make contact. However, he immediately warned, brands are unlikely to be interested in an unknown factory with no reputation. Ji-hyuk was surprised. After all, they have a low price. Isn't that enough to attract attention? Kim explained that brands value trust, not just price. No one knows them in the market yet. Ji-hyuk clarified, maybe it's the volumes? Kim immediately rebutted, their machines are already more precise than handmade. With a chuckle, Ji-hyuk noted that the only thing missing was a chance to prove that they were reliable. He offered a colorful advertisement. Shoes created by skeletons. This will immediately make the brand stand out from the crowd. Before realizing this idea, he wanted to understand what Suya does with the skeleton in his spare time. Turns out the skeleton was painted pink and dressed up like a rock star. The outfit looked provocative. Ji-hyuk tapped the skull and demanded that the skeleton be returned to normal, threatening punishment. But a sudden thought struck him. In this image, the skeleton seemed almost cute, not frightening at all. He gave permission to leave it as it was, but later still asked for the original color back, for the sake of the factory's style. After a while, guests arrived at the factory with a security guard, who wanted to see skeletons at work. Instead of fear, the guests felt more of a keen interest, and even a slight sympathy for the unusual workers. The guard offered to buy a souvenir pair of shoes for only 6,000 won, and immediately made an advertisement. Guests appreciated the quality, especially at this price, but the design had them a little perplexed. The laces were decorated with miniature skulls. It seemed odd and out of place. The guard explained that the decor could easily be removed if it was not to someone's liking. One guest excitedly wanted to buy 4 pairs at once, but the security guard had to refuse. The sale was limited, no more than 1 pair per person, and he politely explained that. Understanding, the visitor chose one model that he liked the most. Photos of the shoes quickly went viral on social networks, garnering likes and reposts. Seorin began to rapidly attract attention. The viral effect worked. After a while, Director Kim walked into the office with a stack of documents. An important package had finally arrived. It was an offering from the Rocco brand, one of the biggest players in the sportswear market. Ji-hyuk was pleased and told me to immediately prepare samples for presentation to the brand. The Rocco representative carefully inspected the shoes, not a single defect. The quality was top-notch. He noted the low production cost and yet excellent execution, which struck him as particularly striking. The representative promised to give the samples to management to discuss next steps. Ji-hyuk cautiously inquired about the chances, but received an evasive answer. It was too early to promise. A spokesperson explained, the idea of shoes from skeletons is still too outlandish for most. Ji-hyuk began to ask about the terms of the contract, which surprised his interlocutor a little. He explained that he had to understand in advance what to prepare for and what risks to take. Toth said the contract may not be profitable. The company is looking for a temporary solution. This irritated Ji-hyuk and he asked if they still wanted to lower the price. Kim quickly intervened, clarifying that it was not about price, but about deadlines and small volumes. Ji-hyuk was puzzled, but Kim reminded him, big brands prefer stable, long-term contracts. He noted that such contracts usually include minimum deliveries for the sake of confidence in the partner. Ji-hyuk asked, are the volumes guaranteed? Kim nodded, the products will be delivered evenly. Sometimes such contracts reduce costs, but in their case it is not critical yet. The representative explained, the contract is short-term, only 3 months, and volumes will be minimal. Surplus will be sent to a central warehouse once the old factory reopens. Ji-hyuk asked about the terms of the contract. It turned out to be about 3 months at 40,000 pairs. He looked to Kim for an opinion, and the latter recognized, getting interest from such a giant was a rare stroke of luck. It is common for big brands to ignore small factories if they don't offer a clear perspective. Ji-hyuk realized, if you only bet on low prices, there would be no serious contracts. He clarified whether such proposals had been sent to others as well. The representative confirmed. At that time, Ji-hyuk offered to reduce the contract to 1 month, with no obligation. He explained that if Rocco restarts its factories, this will not be a problem. The contract can be renewed on a monthly basis. The price will not change, and the company will take care of the rejects. The representative listened to the terms and promised to pass them on to head office immediately. After the meeting, Ji-hyuk and Kim escorted Rep. and discussed how to file the settlement. When he left, Kim didn't hold back. He criticized Ji-hyuk for being too flexible. He noted that the contract has become less favorable and the lack of guarantees could cause losses. Ji-hyuk calmly explained, the samples are still free. That's the point. This takes away the fear of the client and allows you to be sure of the quality without unnecessary risks. He asked Kim if he knew of a company that could do cheaper. He thought about it and said no. Ji-hyuk said trust is built on stability and skeletons already know how to provide it. He emphasized, their factory can grow quickly without sacrificing quality, and that's what makes them unique. Kim acknowledged the point, and Ji-hyuk added, all they need is a chance to prove themselves. If they have to give up a few orders for free, that's a reasonable price. He was sure that if a large company tried their products, they would not refuse. When the term is up, they'll be back and negotiate a contract that works for both parties. At Rocco's headquarters in the United States, the CEO asked what their maximum production capacity was. The secretary reported that they are already working at the limit. But to increase volumes, new workers would have to be recruited, and suppliers have been slow to support this. He added that the current factories can produce up to 200,000 pairs per month, and an additional 300,000 would require a whole new site. The head of the company clarified the status of the plan in Fujian, China, but got the answer. They require a 6-month contract and guarantees for 200,000 pairs monthly. He also inquired about the Xinjiang facility and heard that they were willing for a 3-month contract there, and also that he needs 70,000 pairs by next week. The secretary asked if he was familiar with the commercial about the awakened man from Korea who runs the factory with the help of summoned monsters. The man only shrugged. It was the first time he'd heard it, and it hardly seemed important now. Nevertheless, the secretary turned on the video, offering to take a look. Perhaps it was no ordinary stunt, but something more. After watching, the director became interested. Secretary explained, the video came from Rocco Korean chapter along with the meeting data, but the report voices concerns. The man asked how credible it was. The secretary handed over the contract. After studying the document, the director was surprised. Only a month, automatic renewal, no guarantees, with double fault compensation. He was most amazed at the cost of shipping. He asked if it was a mistake. The secretary explained, this factory has almost no labor costs, thanks to an unusual approach. He inquired about the quality of the shoes and was told, "The samples are decent, no risks, so you can try it." The woman assured, even with marriage there would be compensation. Then the director gave the order, place a test order for 10,000 pairs. Start small but steady. At Seoran, Director Kim walked into Ji Hyuk's office, bringing the news. The first order from Roko, 10,000 pairs. The man brightened up. He had the customer's attention. He asked if the materials were available. Kim assured that everything is on sale. He brought up another question. Should we freeze the current lineup and focus only on this order? However, Ji Hyuk shook his head negatively. There was no need. The machines can handle both tasks. The main thing is that the main labor is done by the technicians. But Kim reminded, the stitching is different in the new models, and the equipment is already running nonstop. Ji Hyuk wondered, what exactly was the problem? He immediately suggested a solution, to create separate machines for the new stitching. The factory already does a lot of things in-house. Kim marveled at the speed with which the man was finding a solution. Ji Hyuk asked if they had forgotten something important. Kim sighed, not enough floor space. The current factory and the 5 additional factories wouldn't do it. The entrepreneur suggested Seoran's warehouse. There's plenty of space there. However, Kim is wary. Manufacturing outside the registered area could be a violation of the law. But Ji Hyuk quickly dispelled his doubts. The warehouse was registered. He asked the same question again. What else needs to be prepared? And they're like, let's go? Kim, increasingly surprised by Ji Hyuk's organization, replied, everything seems to be under control. The next day, an emergency meeting was called at Roko headquarters. We're dealing with the most important issues. The director insisted, renegotiate contracts with current factories, reduce mandatory volumes. But the secretary interrupted. A notice came from the factory where the skeletons work. The man tensed, canceling an order? A change in terms? But the secretary clarified, not at all. The factory reported, the entire batch is ready. The principal almost shrieked in surprise. Was it true? The secretary handed over a letter from Korean Roko. The paper reported, all 10,000 pairs delivered, inspection confirmed, no rejects, excellent quality. The director shook his head. The price, the volume, the speed, unbelievable. Aren't they losing their chance? The secretary assured me that if we could handle 10,000 in 24 hours, a large order would not be a problem. She added, the contract is flexible, with no voluminous commitments, and is only for a month. It is an ideal solution to the current difficulties. Smiling, the director ordered a new order to be placed, all quantities by next week. And he specified that there would be several models this time. We need to test every detail. A new order has arrived at Seoran, 60,000 pairs, 7 different models. Director Kim pointed out, this is a test. The customer clearly wants to know the limit of the factory's capacity. Ji Hyuk grinned. 60,000 couples might surprise even more. He pulled out his cell phone, dialed a number. Asked Mr. Pak if it was possible to get a ton of bones. The answer sounded cheerful. You can, and delivery will be as soon as possible. Within 2 days, Seoran had completed the order, and news of this reached the Roko office. Things got rolling. Then came an additional order, 80,000 pairs with a 1-week deadline. And again, accomplished in 2 days. Next week, 150,000 pairs. We did it in 4. So the factory closed a month's worth of Roko in 10 days. Thanks to Seoran, the gap caused by the closure of old factories disappeared. All the company's problems were solved. The secretary informed the director that the halted production facilities were back in operation, and sooner than predicted. One of the meeting attendees remarked, this is good news. But I noticed Seoran's profits are skyrocketing. He noted, the quality is more consistent than others, and the manufacturing flexibility provided by the skeletons makes them almost perfect. The secretary added, contracts with the other factories cost hundreds of thousands a year, and a partnership with Seoran could turn things around. She emphasized, deliveries occur immediately after clearance, which minimizes losses from overstock. The director agreed and noted, it's time for a formal contract. The next day, the Roko representative arrived at Ji Hyuk's house. He reported, a formal contract has arrived from the main office, worth reviewing. Ji Hyuk hummed. As expected, they had come on their own. The representative explained, this is a formal contract for a year. With a guarantee of up to 150,000 pairs per month, conditions worthy of the biggest players in the market. The man asked for time to scrutinize everything. But as I flipped through the pages, I noticed an oddity. He called out to Director Kim, "Should we agree, or is something wrong?" After Ji-hyuk read the contract, he felt something was wrong with him and asked Director Kim to look into it as well. Kim began to read the document carefully, but soon a perplexed grimace appeared on his face. Ji-hyuk was sure the contract contained several flaws and asked him to point them out. Kim responded that he didn't see a problem, explaining that the only thing not clearly spelled out is the quantity of each model, but that doesn't violate corporate policy. He added that the other clauses are standard terms for all such agreements. However, Ji-hyuk remained dissatisfied. He took the contract again and asked Kim to reread exactly what he thought were the standard clauses. As he read, Ji-hyuk pointed to specific language in the contract, such as a clause that mandates that any loss or damage not attributable to Party A's liability falls on Party B, including compensation. He also noted the clause that Party B should incur a penalty if delivery is delayed. They both weren't surprised by these conditions, but Ji-hyuk recalled a past incident when the factory was closed due to political unrest. He inquired if compensation would have to be paid in the event of such a situation. The representative confirmed that, under the contract, Party B would be responsible. He added that the central office had provided discounts to ease the financial burden. Hearing the word discount, Ji-hyuk was clearly angry. He explained that the compensation had already been paid involuntarily rather than voluntarily. The representative commented that such cases are not uncommon in this industry, and that if the products are not defective and production is running smoothly, they should not be concerned about such conditions. He continued by explaining that he understood that this was Ji-hyuk's first contract, and that's why he might be hesitant. He assured him that such terms were the most common in the industry and that if Ji-hyuk refused them, it would be difficult for him to sign contracts with other companies. He urged Ji-hyuk not to worry, assuring him that everything would be fine. Ji-hyuk interrupted him, reminding him that he had already been told something similar during a trip abroad. He was then assured that everything would go according to plan and that there was no need to worry. However, when confronted with reality, he realized that things were much more complicated than they seemed at first glance. He explained that you need to consider not only the important points that others emphasize, but many other factors as well. He told how that time, while abroad, he accidentally offended the son of a high-ranking company employee, which led to a high-profile scandal. The company even planned to take action against him, but then reversed that decision, because he was the one who helped prevent the company's collapse. Then Ji-hyuk realized an important thing. Those who always follow directions without thinking are often perceived as naive. He emphasized that it is much better to work things out on your own, independent of industry standards and external expectations. Returning to the current situation, Ji-hyuk told Director Kim that they had fulfilled an order for hundreds of thousands of high-quality goods in 2 months. He asked if that was enough to prove himself to Roko, and Kim confirmed that yes. Ji-hyuk picked up his pen and stated that he had made his decision. He crossed out the compensation clause in his contract. He then handed over the contract stating that they were not obligated to adjust to the requirements of other companies and therefore this clause was deleted. When the representative took the papers, Ji-hyuk said that was the only condition under which he was willing to sign the contract. The spokesman responded that the president would never agree to such terms. Ji-hyuk asked why they were refusing and insisted that if Roko didn't nag the contract, there would be no problem. He added that he will send these offers to all factories on the same terms and those who accept will get priority in orders. Ji-hyuk continued by explaining that although these conditions may seem hard, once his company starts receiving orders, they will work tirelessly to fulfill them as quickly as possible. He concluded by stating that if Roko was comfortable with those terms, he was willing to sign the contract immediately, leaving the decision to Roko. The scene switched to Roko's CEO, who was visibly annoyed at the reading of the terms and conditions. Staff commented that this situation was demeaning and that they could not allow a small company to dictate their terms. They recognized that profits had increased thanks to Saren, but not enough to ignore such demands. Another employee countered that this was a chance that should not be missed, as the benefits of working with Saren were limitless. He argued that letting pride get in the way of financial success is irrational. The debate became increasingly tense, and one staff member warned that agreeing to such terms would lead to problems with future contracts. Realizing that the discussion had reached an impasse, the CEO decided to end the meeting. He said that since the factory had resumed normal operations, they would monitor the situation and take action as necessary. However, the effects of the discussions quickly took their toll. One day, an employee approached the general manager to inform him that the factory wanted to enter into a new contract with the addition of a clause to increase production of the DP-10 model. The employee said he had warned the factory that it was too early to discuss the matter. The CEO, angry, replied that the delivery price was too high and the requirements were too complex, and asked why they were putting up with such difficulties. He added that if they were already working with sarin, production would have started long ago. He slapped the table with fury. In the back of his mind, he recognized that the factory's request was reasonable, but he couldn't contain his anger. Just then, another employee walked in with the news that the Chinese factory's products were found to be defective and these goods would have to be remade. The CEO was stunned by this news, and the employee continued, explaining that the amount of product requiring processing was not very large, but the delivery process could be delayed. He added that under the contract, the factory will incur processing costs, but there will not be enough goods until the processing is complete. The CEO took a deep breath and said that if they had worked with sarin, this problem wouldn't have happened. He inquired about the status of sarin, and the employee reported that sarin had sent proposals to several other factories and some had expressed interest and requested samples for contracting. The CEO remarked that the results that sarin is bringing will attract attention. His eyes suddenly shone, and he stated that the first contract always gets priority in production. He ordered that the process of contracting with sarin be started. The staff member, slightly embarrassed, asked if it was too early for that. The CEO, raising his voice, demanded immediate fulfillment, reminding them that if another manufacturer signed a contract with sarin first, their orders would be delayed. Rocco proceeded to sign the contract and their profits tripled. Soon other factories began signing contracts with sarin, one after another. Director Kim remarked with a smile that the number of orders for this month alone exceeded 1 million. Ji-hyuk expressed his joy, stating that this was after sarin's contract was signed. Then he sank into his musings, imagining his factory becoming famous and anticipating millions in future contracts. He added that now all he needs to do is increase the number of skeletons and the money will flow in rivers. Director Kim informed Ji-hyuk that a company had requested to produce clothing. Ji-hyuk replied that he had an idea, but asked the more important question of how much this area relies on manual labor. Director Kim smiled slyly and replied that this industry requires much more labor than shoe manufacturing. Ji-hyuk stood up and announced his decision to open a clothing factory along with a shoe factory. He then asked Director Kim if they would be able to open factories to fulfill any orders, assuring that they were prepared to handle any requests. The director responded enthusiastically that it was a great idea and that given their success in the shoe industry, a new project would not be a problem. He added that all these operations will be supervised by Ji-hyuk himself. Ji-hyuk smiled and said that he had made the final decision and wanted to start implementing the idea as soon as possible. He affirmed that people will no longer look at Chinese factories, as Ji-hyuk's factories will become the leaders of the industry. About 6 months later, Ji-hyuk launched factories for apparel, accessories, and hats. sarin relied on labor-intensive production and quickly pulled ahead of the competition. But soon the first difficulties began. Everything was far from going as smoothly as the man would have liked. Director Kim reported that the shoe factory is doing great, but others are idle. A man suggested combining the sites to move workers between areas quickly, but the plan crashed with reality. All the rooms were too cramped and congested. Ji-hyuk realized that the factories he bought out were small, production processes were slowing down, expansion and business growth were out of the question. He dropped his head on the table with a muffled sigh, realizing the magnitude of the impending problem. Director Kim nodded and said that the best solution is to buy a big factory when money becomes available. Ji-hyuk averted his gaze and quietly spoke about a much deeper problem that had been plaguing him lately. Kim watched the man anxiously and wondered if he could really hear what he was saying. The boy straightened up and replied that he was listening, but felt exhausted, body and soul. He reluctantly admitted that his main problem was that he had lost all interest in work. The man explained that after the factory started to make a profit, he fell into apathy. Kim realized the condition he was in and suggested that Ji-hyuk go home and recover for a while. The man wondered if Kim was joking by letting him leave in the middle of the day. Kim hummed, That's impossible. The reports aren't written, and the desk won't clear itself. Ji-hyuk sighed. He hadn't felt this way before. But Kim didn't seem to catch the hidden meaning. Nevertheless, my colleague encouraged me. The reports are not burning up. If you need to, you can take a break right here. He added that it would be better to rest a little now than to go down for good in a couple of days. The guy thanked, got up, and headed for the couch, feeling a strange sense of relief. At that moment, there was an alarming message. A portal had opened nearby, and an urgent evacuation was needed. Ji-hyuk immediately gave the command and walked out of the building together with Kim without wasting a second. He clarified the type of threat to understand how best to build a defense before launching an attack. A staff member reported in a trembling voice. Skeletons were coming out of the portal, and this alarmed everyone. A news agency helicopter circled over the area, transmitting video and updates from the scene. From the reports it was clear, the awakened squad had already arrived, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The fighters fought as hard as they could, but the skeletons' onslaught was so fierce that they were pushed back. Despite resistance, the skeletons pressed the defenders, pushing them outside the perimeter. Ji-hyuk arrived with Sia to personally assess the situation and make a prompt decision. He felt that he had listened to the inner voice for a reason. His presence here was necessary. The man realized the skeletons the awakened ones were fighting were his own creations. He noticed the numbers, about 100, commanded by probably one of the officers. It seemed like good luck. If he made it in time, then it was still possible to fix things before disaster struck. Ji-hyuk assumed the skeletons were only scouting the situation, so far without serious harm. He tried to regain control over them with magic before it was too late, but he realized with horror that his magic was no longer working. The skeletons would not obey. He realized if the enemies activated at full strength, the consequences would be catastrophic. And then there was an explosion. The skeleton commander entered the battle. The situation became critical. The opponents acted aggressively. There was nowhere to retreat, and help had not arrived either. The awakened were losing confidence. The attacks had become too devastating and unpredictable. Ji-hyuk saw that the skeletons were using his system, but no longer recognized his power. He used magic again. This time right at the commander, hoping to penetrate the defense. To no avail. The spell didn't work. The commander didn't even feel the impact. He suddenly rushed forward to where the man who fought the skeleton was standing and delivered a powerful blow to one of the rescuers. The main character was in shock. One of the comrades rushed to the wounded man, trying to help, but was utterly confused. They realized they were completely surrounded, and it seemed impossible to get out of here without casualties. The wounded man regretfully apologized to the fighter. He could not react in time. And then other skeletons came out of the portal, but instead of attacking, they began to defend the humans. One of the rescuers noticed movement in the sky and pointed his finger hopefully upward. They decided it was the arrival of a strong awakened one who could save the situation. The team shouted, calling out for the stranger and asking to be careful. The enemy is extremely dangerous. With tension in his voice, Ji-hyuk uttered that the skeletons were interfering with his plans and he would handle it himself. The leader of the group recognized the voice and called out the name in amazement. The head of Siren stood before him. The man raised his hand, activating bone magic, and released a swarm of glowing spears into the sky. After the impact, everything was covered in dust and smoke. The fight disappeared in that veil for a second. When everything dissipated, it was clear, not a single skeleton had survived. The battlefield had been cleared. The rescuers stood in shock, unable to believe that one man could destroy such an army. The leader confessed he always wondered why Ji-hyuk didn't use skeletons in fights. Now he realized, a man doesn't need defenders. He himself is capable of destroying everything around him. When Ji-hyuk landed, he approached the rescue team and asked if they were okay. The rescuers thanked him, admitted they thought it was their last day, and promised they would never forget his help. Ji-hyuk smiled weakly in response, noting that he had merely done what he had to do, though he reminded himself that these skeletons were actually his creations. The team leader remarked in surprise that he hadn't realized Ji-hyuk had such unusual abilities. He thanked him again, emphasizing that without him, the entire neighborhood would have been wiped out. He added that the behavior of the skeletons was extremely odd, too smart, and he hadn't expected such coherence from the monsters. He pointed to one particularly notable skeleton, which he thought was the leader. The leader asked Ji-hyuk's opinion, since the latter was also an expert on skeletons. Ji-hyuk gloomed, not knowing what to answer and not wanting to delve into an explanation. To avoid developing the topic, he opened a magical portal and turned the conversation, saying that the most important thing now is to evacuate the wounded. The leader thanked him again and informed him that he would stop by to see him personally soon. He then ordered his team to begin transporting the wounded, starting with the most severe cases. When everyone had left, Ji-hyuk took a deep breath and was surprised to notice that the 100 skeletons easily handled the awakened D-class fighters. He concluded that the awakened Earths were much weaker than he had expected. That wasn't the point, though. Now he needed to urgently find a way out of this situation without further complications. The scene changed. Ji-hyuk was now in his home and holding the bones of the defeated skeletons. He placed the dice in the magic circle to test the system and found that it still worked. However, the mana that powered these skeletons he didn't recognize. It definitely wasn't his. Ji-hyuk explained that that was why he couldn't put the bones in his magic storage. Only items charged with his own mana could go there. He added that he had recently found a solution on how to handle those items that could not be stored directly. Meanwhile, Saya was making noise playing with monster cores, which was starting to annoy him. He yelled at her, claiming he couldn't concentrate because of that sound. He then picked up one of the cores and studied it, asking where she had gotten it in the first place. He reminded her that such kernels were expensive, and if they were broken by accident, there would be serious problems. At that moment, he caught a strange sensation. Ji-hyuk noticed that the mana in the monster's core resembled that in the skeletons. He examined the stone closely and noted that it looked raw, more like natural mana or that which came from the gate. The resemblance was striking. He speculated that the source controlling the skeletons might have been within the gate itself. As he continued to ponder, Ji-hyuk remembered that upon returning to Earth, his body immediately recovered to normal. However, the items from his portal seemed to have merged with the gate instead of remaining in the vault. He began to remember the lost treasures, sadly realizing their loss, and began to wonder if the transition between worlds was the root of the problem. Reflecting on the appearance of the skeletons, he concluded that the lack of his mana and its replacement by the enemies was the reason for the loss of control, though the skeletons still followed his system. A disturbing thought pierced him. If the skeletons could get out, perhaps the other entities could too. He said he couldn't imagine what he would do if creatures like a Death Knight or Golem appeared from the gate. Ji-hyuk irritatedly stated that the situation was out of control and had become a real nightmare. He recognized that he was the one who created these creatures, but is unable to defeat them. He added that he needs to create skeletons that can fight in his place. Ji-hyuk decided to start rebuilding his skeleton army. The main problem was the lack of crystal stones. He said that he would try replacing them with monster cores and see what would happen. He mentioned that he would need a lot of corpses to build an army. He also noted that a large sum of money would be needed, as high-ranking skeletons require magic circles engraved in gold. He admitted that the accumulated funds from his company were no longer enough to build a full-fledged army. Feeling tired, he wondered when he would finally be able to retire and live in peace. He decided that the easiest way to make a quick buck would be to ramp up production. That way profits would go up. However, there was a catch. A significant increase in production would severely reduce the quality of goods. He added that he should heed the advice of Director Kim and buy a huge factory where everything can be manufactured locally. But here he went back to the old problem. Such a factory also requires huge costs. He noticed that he might have to go back to the dungeons and start hunting monsters again to increase his income. But he didn't feel like it. He'd already spent years fighting monsters, and he didn't crave battles anymore. Nevertheless, he recognized that he had no choice. The situation was compelling. Later, the phone rang, and picking it up, he thought it was a business call. He immediately said he doesn't give interviews, doesn't join unions, and only accepts production orders. But the voice on the line immediately clarified that it wasn't about those matters, and introduced himself, Woo Jin, the very leader of the rescue team he had recently saved. Ji-hyuk immediately remembered him and asked how he was doing. Woo Jin replied that he was feeling better and had just gotten out of the hospital today. He explained that he wanted to personally thank Ji-hyuk from his entire team. He then asked if he could come now, and Ji-hyuk agreed by sending him the address. A short time later, Woo Jin arrived in a sports car. He immediately walked over to Ji-hyuk and thanked him again for everything he'd done during the skeleton incident. He assured him that he hoped he wasn't interfering with his work. Ji-hyuk replied that it was fine, and he was just resting. He turned his attention to Woojin's car, noting that it was clearly not cheap. Woojin smiled and admitted that yes, the car was expensive, and he had to spend a lot to buy it. He added that an awakened person couldn't just drive an ordinary car. Ji-hyuk asked if all the awakened ones buy such expensive cars. Woojin confirmed that it was common. He explained that the first thing most awakened people do when they start working is buy themselves a luxury car. Ji-hyuk was surprised and said that he had a request for Woojin. Woojin replied that he was willing to help with anything, since Ji-hyuk had saved his life. At that time, Ji-hyuk shared that he had a great business idea and he wanted to hear Woojin's opinion. Woojin smiled with interest and said he would be happy to hear him out. The scene changed. Now Ji-hyuk was accompanying Woojin to an unremarkable shop with rare trophies. The boy marveled at the choice of location. But the companion only grinned. Everything has a reason, even strange benches. Ji-hyuk leisurely approached the vendor and asked if he had any skeletons larger than the ones on display. The merchant looked at the visitor with interest and asked what size bones were needed. Ji-hyuk explained that he was looking for something gigantic, like a monster with 4 limbs and as tall as a horse. The vendor thought for a moment, then offered a creature named Daimora that fit the description perfectly. The man hadn't heard of it, and Woojin explained, "It's a B class, with an incredibly strong skeleton." Surprised, Ji-hyuk immediately agreed and asked if there were any other interesting options to choose from. The merchant recalled a miniature creature resembling a horse, not as powerful, but colorful. Ji-hyuk decided to take it too. Let it be a variety, it would come in handy in the future. He opened a magical portal and effortlessly moved both skeletons inside, as if it were a normal routine. Woojin was surprised. He thought portals only stored summoned creatures, not items. The boy tensed, realizing he was using the portal too freely, without restraint. Ji-hyuk explained, after a lot of experimentation, he had customized the portal differently. Now it had bones in it. However, Woojin wasn't sure. The Necromancer used to just collect the remains by hand, not hide them. Ji-hyuk turned to the salesman again, but this time his voice sounded suspiciously strained. Woojin caught the change, but didn't question. He didn't want to turn the scene into an interrogation. After completing the transaction, both men headed back to the factory. On the way, Ji-hyuk made it clear that Woojin had a crucial task ahead of him, without further explanation. The guy agreed, but noted that he wanted to know exactly what his role would be. Ji-hyuk opened the portal and pulled out a skeleton. He was going to do an experiment right there on the spot. Woojin took off his shirt and prepared himself. He didn't consider the B-class a serious threat and trusted the Necromancer. Ji-hyuk grinned grimly. Everything was ready for inspection. The man placed his palm on the skeleton's back and motioned for the young man to ride the creature. The guy was confused. He didn't immediately understand what he was being asked to do. The Necromancer noticed the confusion and suggested that the one was uncomfortable without a saddle. He promised to rectify the situation and set about making a quick improvement. When everything was ready, Ji-hyuk allowed the ride and reminded him Woojin had agreed to help himself. The boy climbed the Daimora with determination, and Ji-hyuk asked how comfortable the controls were. However, the skeleton began to move strangely, stumbling as if it had no sense of balance. The sharp jolts made the boy dizzy. He came off and immediately vomited on the floor. Ji-hyuk quickly stepped in and tweaked the parameters, offering to try again. Woojin could feel the difference. The movements were smoother and the ride no longer seemed dangerous. Inspired by the result, the man declared that it was safe to move on to the next stage. After a few tweaks, Woojin recognized, the idea is genius. The Daimora is comfortable for everyday riding. Necromancer confirmed, this is the final prototype, with no further changes. When the guy got off the creature, he clarified whether the Daimora was meant for combat or only as transportation. He explained that riding such a skeleton in combat could be a huge advantage. Ji-hyuk sighed. It's not a combat model. If he wanted to, he would have made a centaur. He emphasized that he is not aiming for complexity. The Daimora will be just that, a means of transportation. Necromancer added, plans to mass-produce it and bring it to market. The guy wondered, would it really come down to selling transportation with no combat functions? Ji-hyuk asked to wait for a while. The finishing touches were still to be done. He asked if they had taken everything into account and if they had forgotten anything important in the design. Woojin's and Sia's answers satisfied him. In their opinion, the result is almost perfect. Later, Ji-hyuk took the guy aside and explained that the Daimora would be perfect for dungeons. He wondered if such a feature would be in demand among adventurers. The guy assured me he would definitely save up for one and offered to expand the line. He suggested adding different colors so that customers would have a choice. He also suggested dice with black armor and metal inserts for a powerful visual effect. Ji-hyuk was impressed and asked to share other out-of-the-box ideas as well. When the Daimora was completed, he handed the prototype over to Woo-jin, and it was a real hit. Orders flowed in. The idea blew up the market. The guy recognized the concept was brilliant, and the Daimora was an absolute triumph. Ji-hyuk offered to extend the vacation and promised a discount after the release. The guy only laughed. He was already going to devote his entire vacation to the project. They started creating the final design of the Daimora together. But the work was interrupted by a staff member with a report. All technical changes have been completed. Upon seeing the creature, the employee was taken aback. He hadn't realized that a skeleton could be rideable. Ji-hyuk called him over to his place and invited him to participate in the appearance design. The one was surprised, but the man assured everyone can contribute to the project. The employee walked over to the table, grabbed a pen, and began sketching a metal sketch. He suggested silver inserts to accentuate the bone color and asked for opinions. Ji-hyuk marveled. The image turned out spectacular and unusual. However, Woo-jin was not convinced. He found the design overloaded. He emphasized that the skeleton should inspire power, not glittering jewelry. The staff member snorted, saying that the newcomer didn't understand. Strength can also be in grace. He added, that's why Woo-jin is still far from real design. An argument broke out between them, each fiercely defending his point of view. Ji-hyuk was starting to get annoyed. The tension was rising and discussion was becoming futile. To stop the bickering, he suggested, let them create both options and have a vote. The winner will be rewarded with a premium or a hefty discount. Both agreed, and the Necromancer smiled satisfied. Things were moving in the right direction. He knew, the hotter the debate, the greater the attention. Which means profits are close at hand. The stage had changed. It was now a spacious theater, filled to the brim with audience members. Ji-hyuk came on stage and introduced himself to the audience. He announced a demonstration of the lead horse, promising to show a basic version of it first. Sia opened the curtain so that the audience could see the original appearance of the racehorse. But the disappointed audience could barely contain their yawns. His appearance was unimpressive, to say the least. Ji-hyuk addressed the crowd again, explaining that this version was different from the one they had seen online. He promised to show the real one. He snapped his fingers, opening a magical portal from which the very same horse majestically appeared. Addressing the audience, Ji-hyuk stated that this is the version they are familiar with from online videos. The audience was animated. The hall was filled with camera flashes. Everyone wanted to capture this miracle. Ji-hyuk continued the story by emphasizing that the design of the horse can be customized to the owner's preferences, making the purchase especially personal. He added that the horse is useful not only in everyday life, but also in dungeons. Its system allows it to dodge monster attacks and automatically find its owner. The audience gasped in amazement. One of the spectators remarked that exploring the dungeons would be much easier now. Another praised both the idea and the look, adding with a smile that the Awakened used to drive sports cars into dungeons, but now it would be a whole other level. Ji-hyuk turned to the audience again, saying that there was nothing further to explain. You can try everything for yourself. He announced that a winner will now be chosen to take the leading horse home. The starting price is 150 million. He dipped his hand into the box to pull out a lucky number. The winning number was number 37. The winner went up on stage, and Ji-hyuk handed him a tablet to customize the horse's appearance. The winner replied that he would use off-the-shelf options, but complained that the prices were biting. Ji-hyuk offered with a smile to pay by card if he didn't have cash, but the man said that such sums of money he had with him were business as usual. Ji-hyuk was surprised by this response and decided that the person in front of him was clearly a high-level Awakened one. It was later revealed to be Han Se-hyuk, the leader of the Hanul Guild squad. When Ji-hyuk knew that he was facing one of the leaders of the top 10 guilds in Korea, he mentally smiled. This was the perfect client. Han Se-hyuk asked to see the design he had chosen. Ji-hyuk explained that once a design is selected, it is registered for the user and the final version cannot be shown. However, he promised to show the individual selected elements. He told SAE to bring the parts he had ordered and assured him that there would be no problem with the issuance of the gorse. Sang-ho was beyond thrilled when he found out that it was his design that Han Se-hyuk had chosen. Han Se-hyuk asked if it was possible to engrave glowing letters with his name on the body of the horse. Ji-hyuk said each letter costs 10 million won, and the entire inscription will cost 700 million. Han Se-hyuk thought about it and decided to put it off for now, suggesting only the letter S on the sides and a small letter on the forehead. Ji-hyuk agreed and calculated the cost with the changes, and it came out to 7 billion won. Then the process of registering the racehorse in Han Se-hyuk's name began. Ji-hyuk told him to put his hand on the horse's head. When Han Se-hyuk touched the horse, a magic circle flashed, and the contract was sealed. Ji-hyuk suggested that the new owner choose a name for the racehorse. Han Se-hyuk chose the name Yundao, genuinely happy about his acquisition. Ji-hyuk inwardly crinkled his nose. The name seemed too simple and old-fashioned. Everything was going perfectly. Until now. He announced to the audience that the first leading horse named Yundao had been sold to Han Se-hyuk, causing a storm of applause. He then moved on to the next step, the announcement of the owner of the second horse. He explained that ordinary people only had two ways to face monsters. The first is to see them on TV or read them in the news. The second is when monsters burst out of the gate and attack in reality. But according to Ji-hyuk, that's all changed now, thanks to his idea that didn't exist before. The scene changed, a monster appeared on the street, and passers-by recoiled in panic. The girl shouted that it was urgent to evacuate. The guy next to her reassured her that the monster wasn't dangerous, someone was riding it. The girl asked incredulously if that meant there was no threat. The guy confirmed, it's not a monster, but the lead horse is a summoned creature. He admired how cool it was, and added that the rider must have been Han Se-hyuk because only his horse has an S on its forehead. Hearing this, Han Se-hyuk decided to show off his horse in a spectacular way. He began to perform spectacular stunts, delighting passers-by. The girl was mesmerized and said she would like to go for a ride with him. The scene has changed. Now Han Se-hyuk is riding his new horse. He met up with the guildmates, who immediately noticed that he was out with his horse. Han Se-hyuk jumped down and walked over to greet them. One of the companions pointed out that this horse looked nothing like the old Daimora. Han Se-hyuk proudly announced that her name was Yundao. Someone from the guild asked if they could ride, but he immediately clarified that he had heard of some special effects when he touched it. Han Se-hyuk explained that the effects were only activated when the wearer touched him. At this moment, Kim Han-yeol, the guild leader, walked over and expressed his admiration for the horse's appearance. He was surprised to note that Yundao's body was covered in outer armor. Han Se-hyuk ordered the horse to move aside and rest for a while. But Kim Han-yeol asked for permission to examine the horse up close. Han Se-hyuk tensed up and asked what exactly the man was going to do. Kim Han-yeol assured him that he would just take a look, nothing more. However, Han Se-hyuk was wary and asked if he was serious and promised not to do anything stupid. Kim Han-yeol smiled and promised that everything would be fine. He began to examine Yundao, commenting on how sturdy he was, and noticed that the functionality was on par as well. His eyes sparkled when he mentioned that he had seen a video where a racehorse could change appearance. He asked if he could remove the armor from the horse's body, but Han Se-hyuk stopped him abruptly, telling him not to do anything stupid. Kim Han-yeol ignored the warning and tried to remove the armor. Feeling resistance, he applied more force. Han Se-hyuk rushed towards him, warning him that the armor was a part of the horse's body, not a removable item. But he was too late. Kim Han-yeol had already ripped off part of the structure. Han Se-hyuk exploded with rage and screamed so loud it shook the walls. Kim Han-yeol tried to justify himself by saying he didn't know. Removing the armor would reveal Yundao's insides. Han Se-hyuk was furious, recalling what he had clearly said, the horse is solid as a monolith. Kim Han-yeol parried that he was informed too late, only adding fuel to the fire. Han Se-hyuk was on the verge of not even being heard. Now already Kim Han-yeol himself looked unsure. He apologized and offered to buy a new horse. But Han Se-hyuk responded by saying that it wouldn't change anything, because even the new one wouldn't be Yundao. Kim Han-yeol offered to fix the horse, but Han Se-hyuk said, "You fix it yourself." That one nodded and promised to take full responsibility. He assured that when he talked to Ji-hyuk, he wouldn't touch Yundao without permission, and added that the only reason he was still in one piece was because of his status as the guild leader. There would be no forgiveness next time. The scene shifted to Ji-hyuk, who revealed that his magic horse project had made huge profits. Each of the creatures brought millions of won, and the lad's previous fears of drudgery vanished. However, the man was furious when he learned that his first magic horse had been destroyed in just a few days. He saw this creature as the basis of his grand plan. Kim Han-yeol inquired if the horse could be restored. Ji-hyuk admitted that it is possible, but would require costly replacement of the bones with suitable ones. The guy sighed heavily and noticed that with this replacement, Yoon-dal's body would become a collection of heterogeneous elements. He feared that if Han Se-hyuk found out about it, serious reprisal might follow. Ji-hyuk admitted, "You could try welding the bones together, but the damage was too severe and the seams would make the structure even more fragile." The man pulled out his phone, saying he would contact Han Se-hyuk before making a decision. The answer came quickly: Yoon-dal should be restored to his original form. Ji-hyuk didn't mind and said that it would cost about 50 million won. The guy replied that the main thing was to strengthen the structure, making it as secure as possible. He assured me that money was not a problem, only the quality of work was important. Ji-hyuk, thinking about it, noticed that Yoon-dal was hurt as badly as if he'd been hit by a truck. The man opposite excitedly admitted that he himself had caused the breakdown. Ji-hyuk froze and asked for an explanation of what was said. The guy nodded and explained that he had seen bones self-assemble into armor and decided to do an experiment. The idea seemed promising. If he could control the bones, it would be a huge advantage. He wanted to try out the concept and, if successful, order a set for himself. But things didn't go according to plan, and the man admitted that he had made a mistake. He asked Ji-hyuk if he could make an armor suitable for a human. The engineer imagined how the armor worked with a human body, not a Daimora, and asked a counter-question. The guy replied that armor that attaches to the arm would be ideal. He clarified that Ji-hyuk might not fully understand its features, and began to explain that it can increase up to 10 meters, causing all the gear to become unusable. In addition, it's too hard to maintain a uniform of that size. Ji-hyuk suggested creating an armor that can expand with the body. The man said that he already had similar armor, but it was causing difficulties. Ji-hyuk, not wanting to waste time, demanded an explanation of what exactly the problem was. He added that it is impossible to make a suitable replacement without analyzing the current model. Kim Han-yeol hesitated but agreed and offered to go outside for a demonstration. Outside, the man activated the ability and became gigantic, making Ji-hyuk raise his head to see his face. The engineer observed the transformation and asked to shrink, noting that overprotective armor was not required here. Kim Han-yeol agreed. His conversation partner's words made sense. He noted that he just needed something to cover his body. Even with his impressive looks, he didn't want to stand out. Ji-hyuk made it clear that he understood his discomfort. The guy started complaining that all the fighters were fighting in stylish armor and he was forced to wear a tight blue suit. Ji-hyuk could hardly contain his reaction and preferred not to even imagine this picture. Kim Han-yeol continued by lamenting how much his size attracts attention. If a portal suddenly appeared and had to fight outside the dungeons, the news would show him in a blue suit, and it would be so embarrassing that he wouldn't leave the house. Grabbing Ji-hyuk's hand, the man said he was willing to pay any expense for suitable armor. Ji-hyuk realized that the horse project was a way for him to make money. But now he has a chance to connect with an S-ranked fighter. He remembered how in Saren he had tried to eliminate system bugs by linking skeletons to fighters' bodies to analyze their movements. The engineer asked what kind of weapon the man preferred. He was surprised, but admitted that he relied on martial arts. It was too uncomfortable to carry large weapons. Ji-hyuk's eyes flashed. This was opening up new possibilities. He expressed sympathy and promised to personally take care of creating the armor. The boy was amazed at this sudden change in the engineer's demeanor. Ji-hyuk explained that if he was going to take the job, the armor had to be top-notch. He asked for strong and fresh bones of high-level monsters to be prepared. He also warned that the project would be extremely expensive. Kim Han-yeol was pleased and assured him that the cost did not scare him. He thanked the engineer for his willingness to help. After 5 days, the guy was anxiously walking from corner to corner, causing Han Se-hyuk to lose his patience. The man yelled for the man to calm down and complained that his fuss was being transmitted to him as well. Kim Han-yeol admitted that he's excited. This is the first time he'll have his own armor. The man came closer and asked when the orders would be ready. Han Se-hyuk replied that Ji-hyuk had promised to complete the work in the next few days. The guy repeated the question. trying to figure out exactly how long it would be for a couple days. Han Se-hyuk said irritably that he didn't know, and offered to call the engineer. The man snickered and admitted that he was afraid to rush Ji-hyuk in case it would hurt the quality. He asked how good the armor would be. Han Se-hyuk assured that the armor would be excellent. The level was visible even from Yoon Dao's armor. He added that Kim Han-yeol should keep in touch with the engineer. The man didn't understand what that was about. He explained that Ji-hyuk was the only one who could create such armor, so it was important to stay close. Kim Han-yeol suggested inviting Ji-hyuk into their guild. Han Se-hyuk assumed that the engineer would refuse. He already had money and was more interested in business. Han Se-hyuk assumed it was because of his company's proximity or interest in skeletons. He admitted that the more he thought about it, the more mysterious the man seemed to him. Although the engineer seemed to be greedy for money, he didn't use the ability for direct gain. If he wanted to unleash his power, he would have done so immediately. Even after the abilities became known, he showed no interest in the gate. Most awakened ones seek combat experience, but not him. Han Se-hyuk concluded that everyone has a different reason. Some avoid violence for personal or spiritual beliefs. The man countered that if Ji-hyuk was like that, he wouldn't have interfered with the past unstable portal. Perhaps he has a gate-related trauma. At this moment, Kim Han-yeol received the message and brightened. The armor was ready. He ran out of the office, entrusting the rest to Han Se-hyuk. The scene changed. A man arrived at Ji-hyuk's place with incredible speed. The engineer was surprised at his haste. The boy, worried, asked about his armor. Ji-hyuk pointed at her and offered to remove the bedspread himself. Kim Han-yeol approached, overwhelmed with anticipation, and carefully removed the cloth. When he saw the armor, his eyes lit up. Standing in front of the armor, the man asked impatiently if he can fit in it given his size. Ji-hyuk confidently stated that the armor was designed for everyday use, then asked if the man wanted to try it on. The man enthusiastically made it clear that he would not miss such an opportunity. Once the armor was on him, he wondered if it was now acceptable to use his ability to enlarge his body. Ji-hyuk snapped his fingers, and dozens of bones appeared in the air as if by magic. He explained that when the augmentation ability is activated, these bones will assemble themselves and become part of the armor. Ji-hyuk pointed to the set of bones labeled 1 and made it clear to stand in front of them, spreading his arms and legs. When the dice turn scarlet, there will be a sign. You can move on to activation. As soon as the color changed, Ji-hyuk softly signaled that it was time. The man activated the ability, feeling slightly uncomfortable with the unfamiliar sensation. The bones began to rapidly gather and expand around the body, forming a spectacular, almost heroic armor. The image was so imposing that even Sia couldn't take her eyes off this spectacular transformation. The guy had successfully completed the transformation without damaging his armor, and was so moved that tears came to his eyes. He couldn't believe he had finally realized his dream of becoming the person he had always wanted to be. Ji-hyuk said with a slight smile that it had been made with quality materials provided by the man himself. He also assured that the armor was extremely reliable and asked if it had lived up to the owner's expectations. Tears came to his eyes, and the man admitted that the armor had even exceeded expectations. Now he could be a father his daughter would be proud of. He then clarified how to return to the previous dimensions. Ji-hyuk gave clear instructions. Wait for the blue light, and say the word return. As soon as the man accomplished everything, the body smoothly assumed its normal size without causing the slightest malfunction. Fascinated by the armor, he was relieved that now he wouldn't have to constantly buy new clothes. He added that the dream had come true, and Ji-hyuk responded with a chuckle, reminding him, armor stats were still far from perfect. The man, without hiding his delight, reminded me that anything that can be worn fits him. Now he is absolutely delighted with the result. He then gently asked how much the armor had cost. Ji-hyuk waved it off. 3 billion won. The materials were really expensive. The man was surprised and clarified if the amount was too little for such a product. Ji-hyuk confirmed the amount and soon spoke of another request, an investment in Saran's company. He explained that he didn't mean a standard investment, just an opportunity to borrow if necessary. The guy sincerely wondered why he needed to borrow money. Ji-hyuk didn't bother to explain, but only pointed out the benefits of the deal, lifetime maintenance and upgrades included. He added that such an offer was hardly ideal, and he wanted to know the man's opinion. That one thought for a moment, then clarified exactly how much money Ji-hyuk was referring to. The armor creator said with a chuckle that the more the better. He promised to pay it all back quickly, recalling the hundreds of billions in revenue. The man nodded and offered to borrow 20 billion won from his own savings. He explained that he had been saving the money, but had long been unable to find an outfit worthy of such an expenditure. Ji Hyuk, stunned by the figure, still thanked and asked again if he was sure of his decision. The man shook his hand affirmatively and promised to transfer the funds later, expressing his hope for a successful partnership. At this time, Han Seok watched in amazement as Yundol fully recovered and was full of strength again. The man happily shared his impressions of the visit, how he had increased in size, and how the bones gathered around him as if in a movie. Suddenly, there was a loud rumbling sound. Han Seok immediately realized it was an unstable magic gate. He pointed out that this is a D rank and it's best not to get involved. There are special groups for these situations. The man remarked that the citizens must be alarmed, for the gate could be dangerous. His eyes lit up with determination as he headed for the gate to protect the people and ensure order. Han Seok was shocked the normally reserved leader rushed toward the gate without hesitation. Giant snakes appeared at the destroyed portal. The man got there quickly, using his new armor in combat. He handled the snakes easily, as if he were playing with children's toys. His actions were soon in the news. The host reported that guild leader Hanul had arrived at the site of the unstable gate, clad in a unique bone armor. A guest was invited on the air who opined that the armor was created by none other than the genius from Saran, Ji Hyuk. Meanwhile, Ji Hyuk himself watched the news, amazed at how quickly the information spread. He was pleased to note that the man was pleased with the reservation, and honestly admitted, he just loves to earn it. Noticing Saya playing with one of the skeletons, Ji Hyuk smiled. Thanks to her, he was gathering combat data. He added that Saya helped save a lot of time otherwise spent on skeleton training. Ji Hyuk clarified that when he accumulated the right amount of data, he would be able to improve his entire army. When he noticed Saya doing something weird with the skeleton, he called out to her sharply. Such actions interfere with data collection. At that moment, the notification came. The funds from the man had been transferred. Ji Hyuk thought about expanding his business. The scene has changed. The director of Roko was voicing his displeasure at the reduction in supply, as Siren is the most profitable partner. He admitted that the current plant is overloaded and no new orders can be taken yet. The assistant informed him that Siren was planning to build a new factory, large-scale and modern. The director was dumbfounded and delighted at the same time. He praised the idea of keeping the old plant for general purposes and using the new one for special contracts. The assistant added that Saran was now actively looking for new partners. The director immediately told him to start negotiations. He demanded that all possible capacity of the new plant be booked urgently, before someone else does. In Ji Hyuk's office, Kim explained how rumors of the new plant had triggered a surge in orders. Roko was offered a contract for 700,000 units per month. Ji Hyuk was overwhelmed by the scale. It is now his company that produces most of Roko's products. He was happy to note that everyone seemed to have finally realized the importance of the Siren brand. Turning to manager Kim, he told him to approve all bids and asked why the medium-sized factories were particularly active. The manager explained, the key difference in approach is that mid-sized companies focus on design and marketing. The big players, on the other hand, rely on technologies they have developed over the years through partnerships and in-house labs. Ji Hyuk wondered about the technical potential, but Kim assured him there was nothing to worry about for now. He added that with time things will fall into place and strong companies will come to cooperate on their own. As soon as the technical exchange is established, orders to Saran will pour in one after another. Ji Hyuk was surprised at the manager's confidence. He explained that if Siren's line collapsed, it would signal failure. An example is the collapse of the Korean shoe industry. He described how the agile companies left first and then, slowly but surely, the giants followed. This is the natural cycle of the industry. Ji Hyuk decided to think about the future and suggested that we start developing our own technology. He noted that they had nothing to lose and asked if they should open their own lab. Kim immediately asked if Ji Hyuk was familiar with the Korean Shoe Industry Association. The one looked a little surprised, and the manager began his explanation. The association unites about 300 factories and remains the most important player in the industry, despite losing its former popularity. The manager noted that the participants went through tough competition with cheap Chinese products, surviving thanks to high technology. They are particularly strong in niche segments, for example, in the production of footwear with protective elements. Kim assured that partnering with them would allow Siren to close the technology gaps quickly. He added that he himself was once a member of the association and was even involved in sending invitations. He also remembered that Ji-hyuk always tried to avoid paperwork. Ji-hyuk appreciated Kim's experience and admitted that he had no objection to joining. He noted that if Kim is already there will definitely be no problem with the clearance. Later, Ji-hyuk arrived at the Korean Shoe Association event along with Kim's manager and was amazed at the size of the event. The guy did not hide his surprise. He expected something modest, but he came across real luxury. The manager admitted that this was the first such event for him as well. He didn't know what to expect. The conversation was interrupted by a man who approached Ji-hyuk with a friendly smile. He turned out to be Yu Young-oh, the president of the association, who was genuinely delighted by the young inventor's visit. The guy responded with a discreet handshake and thanked him for the welcome, but inwardly, he wasn't rushing to judgment. Something about what was happening was unsettling, especially when the man was brought on stage as the guest of honor. Holding back disbelief, Ji-hyuk began to realize. It's far more than just a welcome party. The president began his speech by recalling that Korea was once the world's second-largest exporter of shoes. The manager commented that for a long time this was indeed the case, but competition with China and SEA has eroded the position. He added that even staying afloat in such conditions is already an achievement. Hanol continued by noting that the skeleton technology developed by Ji-hyuk could give Korea back the lead. He said the combined efforts can revive the former glory of the Korean footwear industry. Only then did the guy realize the real reason for the invitation. They wanted to use his ideas for their own purposes. The manager sharply objected, reminding the president that no such arrangements had been made and the venue for such conversations was poorly chosen. He recalled that skeletons are Ji-hyuk's personal invention, and such suggestions amount to trespassing. Trying to soften his tone, the president spoke of negotiations and offered an impressive sum. But the manager was clearly angry. He was outraged that such an issue was being raised out of the blue, without an official request. There was a palpable tension between the association and the manager, which the guy decided to defuse. He intervened, suggesting that perhaps it was due to miscommunication and lack of clear dialogue. The man offered to end the meeting and continue the conversation later, under more appropriate circumstances. Without another word, the guy walked out of the hall, but mentally promised he would make the president regret it. The next day, the manager apologized to him at length for what had happened. The guy calmly made it clear that it wasn't his fault and no apology was required. The manager admitted that if he had known how it would turn out, he wouldn't have offered to go. Ji-hyuk didn't answer. He just sat down on the table and sighed heavily. This made it clear that his mood was gloomy. The manager tried to cheer him up by reminding him that they didn't expect to cooperate with the association. The guy had noticed that sometimes connections were useful, while their complete absence could be a problem. He changed the subject, asking if the manager thought something strange. Toth admitted that he talked to friends after the event and learned that the president and his entourage were already spreading rumors. It's like the guy is planning to transfer the skeletons to other companies, but is keeping it a secret. Ji-hyuk suggested that the president himself might be behind it. The manager replied that it was unlikely. The association was more of a symbolic nature at the moment. The guy then asked who could stand behind the scenes and actually manage the processes. The manager explained that the association is dominated by 3 companies, Minyoung, Taehung, and Tal International. He specified that they are the leaders of the Korean shoe market, although the factories are located overseas in China and SEA. At the same time, the headquarters of these companies are still located in Korea. Ji-hyuk questioned whether they are funding the association. The manager confirmed, yes, but only superficially, because all production facilities are located abroad. The guy pointed out that apparently these companies pay to maintain the status of Korean brands. The manager agreed. Small companies just don't have that kind of money. Guy expressed the opinion that you have to identify your enemies first. He can be soft on allies but not on adversaries. He also asked the opinion of small firms. The manager said that they would have benefited from skeletons, but because of the machinations of the president, they did not attend the meeting. The guy replied that he would not respond for now, but would later eliminate the 3 major companies and external threats. He asked Kim if he understood why skeletal transport production had been halted despite the profits. Ji-hyuk explained, there were too many firms that wanted to make a deal, and he couldn't accept everyone. He said it is easier with the footwear industry. There are many small players that can be connected. He clarified that if he unites them and gains control of the association, outside interference will no longer matter, which means it will be possible to get rid of the three big companies quietly and quickly. The manager asked if the guy was going to use skeletons as a tool of influence. Guy explained, the idea is not to give skeletons, but to make it appear as if they are temporarily provided. The manager was impressed. This approach would benefit both Saren and the association, and workers would keep their jobs. The guy smiled and confirmed, that's right, that was his plan. He ordered documentation and regulations to be prepared. A few days later at a meeting, members surrounded the president, praising him for his success with Saren. The president grinned with an important look, claiming he was just doing his duty. At that moment, he noticed Ji-hyuk and Kim entering and greeted them enthusiastically. He walked over to the guy, held out his hand and thanked him, but he ignored the gesture and didn't respond. Finding himself in an awkward situation, the president muttered that maybe the guy hadn't noticed him and stepped aside. The guy came on stage, briefly introduced himself, and got straight to the point without any unnecessary introductions. He noted that the topic is not that significant, but it is clear from recent conversations, everyone is concerned about the skeleton issue. The guy recognized, the interest is obvious, because skeletons do not eat, drink, and do not get tired, and promised to provide them. However, he warned that the conditions would not be at all what those gathered had hoped for. However, the association's actions made him angry, because no one was trying to harmonize what was said on his behalf. When the president started to justify himself, the guy interrupted him, calling it all empty words. He indicated that he would give up the skeletons, but only on his own terms. The first of these was a demand that he not do business with those who disgusted him. He formally proposed the removal of the current president of the association. Guy added that if the majority supported the initiative, he would join the association and provide access to the skeletons. The president was shocked and outraged. This had never happened before in the history of the organization. Ji-hyuk reminded about the rules. If half of the votes are in favor of the motion, a vote is taken, and if 2/3 support it, the decision takes effect immediately. The president remarked that only a sitting member can make such suggestions, and the guy is not one. At that point, the manager stepped forward and said, he's the one who's officially putting forward the motion for Yu Young-oh's resignation. The guy smiled approvingly and said that everything was in place now. He suggested that the vote be taken at once. Ji-hyun suggested that participants raise their hands to show their support for the proposal. It soon became clear that participants were dissatisfied with the president's authoritarian approach to decision-making. The number of supporters passed 170 out of 330 members, which meant a quorum had been reached to start voting. Ji-hyun asked those who seconded the motion to raise their hands again to confirm the final number. After a careful vote count, the final result was 220 votes in favor of suspension, which officially sealed the decision. Ji-hyun announced that Yun-ho has been officially removed as president and demoted to an ordinary member of the association. The president took umbrage, loudly proclaiming that the process was conducted unofficially. Ji-hyun calmly replied that if the president didn't like the result, he could call a meeting and try to challenge the decision, though it would be futile. He added that he had already signed documents thanking members for their support in the process of the president's resignation. Ji-hyun officially announced his membership, drawing rapturous applause. Mr. Django looked confused, receiving an unexpected message, which made Ji-hyun check its contents. However, he decided not to give Mr. Young a chance to respond to this, having anticipated his reaction. Ji-hyun announced that he would keep his promise and provide the skeletons to the association. He, as a businessman and a member of the association, offered to provide them for free. However, he pointed out an important misunderstanding about skeletons that needed clarification. Ji-hyun explained that skeletons are different from regular workers and cannot be effectively distributed among more than 300 companies. He noted that they function better in one location, whether for maintenance or other operations, rather than scattered throughout the facility. Therefore, it was impossible to provide the factories with all the skeletons, and he suggested providing labor instead. A participant asked what exactly Ji-hyun meant by offering labor. He replied that he would take orders from factories, produce goods and deliver them, with a markup of 1,501 won per unit. He clarified that factories can sell shoes at any price they see fit, whether it is 10,000 won or 1,500 won. Someone asked how this system differs from production orders at Siren. Ji-hyun replied that Siren had one key condition: the company did not manufacture for the domestic market, only for export. Siren will now only accept orders for shoes for the domestic market from association members without going directly to the market. Members asked if this meant that factories would become redundant. Ji-hyun admitted that factories could become redundant. He emphasized that the new system may reduce the need for factories and workers, but it is a matter of cooperation and mutual support. He recognized that Siren would not be able to cover all jobs and proposed a combined system with workers and skeletons. Ji-hyun explained that the number of skeletons in a factory will depend on the number of workers. For example, a factory with 5 workers might be allocated 15 skeletons. One participant asked why skeletons were combined with workers if the original idea was to reduce labor costs. Ji-hyun replied that the question is fair, but emphasized that the new system inevitably brings additional burden. He added that if your companies have survived the tough years, they can handle this challenge as well. He confirmed that the transition will be more difficult for newcomers to the industry. He explained that anyone who wants shoes through the association has to set up a factory, hire workers, which is far from easy. He suggested introducing criteria for entry, such as having a factory and workers, to leave the market exclusive to members. He proposed to work together to reclaim the domestic market seized by China and prove his determination and the power of dreams. At this point, the former president interrupted him by asking what would happen to exports. Ji-hyun replied that Korea's shoe exports have long been stagnant. The president noted that this does not apply to all companies, pointing out that some are still dependent on exports. Ji-hyun explained that export-dependent companies are out of his purview because the skeleton system only concerns local factories. Then Django nervously remarked that even though the factory is overseas, the headquarters is still in Korea. Ji-hyun replied that the solution will not satisfy everyone, but the priority is to find a balanced solution that takes into account different opinions. He asked if the majority agreed. The members of the association responded by cheerfully raising their hands in agreement. Ji-hyun turned to Django and stated that it was obvious that the majority agreed. He asked if that was enough for him or if he had another plan. Django remained silent and confused. Ji-hyun continued that there are no obstacles to the plan then, and Korea will now become the land of opportunity. Korean factories, previously plagued by market constraints, have reclaimed the domestic market by utilizing the connections they have built over the years. Later, a formal meeting of the association was held, and the first item on the agenda was the removal of the president. As expected, Yoon-woo was removed from his post. Director Kim took the stage and announced that the next step would be the criteria for membership. He emphasized that they all represent the Korean footwear industry and noted that Ji-hyun has initiated real steps toward cooperation. He added that it made them wonder whether companies with overseas factories could be considered Korean. Members asked if he was referring to Manga and the other 2 companies. He confirmed that the 3 companies met the criteria. Director Kim said they will formally propose to limit membership to companies with factories in Korea. Members were a little hesitant as these companies provided a significant amount of work. However, Ji-hyun intervened, saying that they could make any decision they wanted, and as reasonable adults, understood all the consequences of their actions. A participant asked what if a company becomes a joint venture with an organization overseas and can meet the criteria for membership. He noted that this scenario could be an inconvenience to others, especially if competitors return to the market. Director Kim responded that they would vote on the original motion first and then asked who was in favor. When he saw majority support, he announced that those who did not meet the criteria would be excluded. Ji-hyun stated that since the issues are resolved, he will submit a final proposal. The position of association president was left vacant, and he nominated Mr. Kim as the new president, although only members with more than 3 years of service could make such nominations. Meanwhile, discussions among the participants became more and more animated, and they proposed to appoint Director Kim as president. Back at the company, Director Kim told Ji-hyun that he should have at least hinted at such a move. Ji-hyun replied that he couldn't have found another person for such a responsibility. Director Kim commented that he is too busy to take on the role of association president. Ji-hyun suggested that he choose a vice president and delegate tasks. Director Kim said that now that he is president, he will be giving orders. However, He warned Ji-hyun about possible trouble over the discarded dog and the importance of informing the media about the results of the meeting. Ji-hyun agreed, saying it was a great idea and suggested they start implementing it immediately. With the addition of skeletons, profits grew exponentially, including those who worked in Seeran's factories. Their number had reached 5,000, greatly increasing Ji-hyun's income. With the addition of transportation and service operations, net profit per month approached 200 billion won. However, these revenues were not enough to rebuild the zombie army. Ji-hyun started looking for new ways to make profits and stumbled upon the topic of traditional industries. And then he had a brilliant idea, especially because his country was a world leader in electronics manufacturing. His country's major electronics companies were gaining global recognition. It became clear that Korea was indeed a powerful player in this field. However, the traditional electronics-related industries were moving in a completely different direction. Some auxiliary goods such as jansan, mineruji, which required manual labor, were quite valuable. Ji-hyuk notices that Soya is playing with a toy not made in Korea. He took it away from the girl and noted that people put price over quality when buying such items. He was thinking of entering the electronics industry. But the problem was, what to produce? This industry was very different from the shoe industry, which could be started relatively easily with the right materials. Ji-hyuk considered buying a Korean company, but found that they had all gone bankrupt, leaving nothing. In addition, products requiring advanced technology were not needed. Then he thought of hiring experienced professionals and starting research. But would poorly made products sell? He reflected on how China started in this industry, producing cheap, low-quality products. Suddenly an idea occurred to him. Blind copying was unacceptable, but it might be the only way to the goal. Ji-hyuk then visited Director Kim at his workplace and respectfully called out to him. Director Kim was surprised. Ji-hyuk addressed him as if he were his superior. Director Kim replied that it was not necessary to call him president. But Ji-hyuk insisted that since he was now the president of the association, it was appropriate. Kim admitted that it sounded strange. Ji-hyuk laughed, assured that he would stop, and asked for a private conversation to discuss a new business idea. In Shenzhen, China, at Choshui, a company specializing in headphone manufacturing. The president of the company spoke to the representative, inquiring about his background. He replied that he was from SR Electronics, a new company founded by the head office. On Sung-hoon was a manager at SR Electronics. The president asked if there was another head office. Mr. On-song replied that there was a company called Soren, but it was in a completely different field and probably unfamiliar to the president. However, SR Electronics was a Korean startup with a weak production line. To expand rapidly in the market, it received investment from the head office and worked to improve production through the purchase of licenses. The president questioned whether such an initiative was really taking place in Korea. Is it profitable to produce headphones there? Mr. On-sun replied that he could not comment on this as it depended on the manager's point of view. However, all SR Electronics required was the rights to manufacture the product, full technology transfer, and export rights. The president inquired about exports, expressing concern about the possible increase in competitors. He noted that competition is already high and the emergence of similar products would create a problem. Mr. On-song assured him that they would pay 700,000 in advance and buy back all the equipment to produce the old model at an additional cost. He emphasized the rarity of such an opportunity. The president observed that if these products were developed with great care, 700,000 is a relatively small sum. Mr. On-sun stated that they were willing to pay 1 million, but not more. The president responded by asking why they can increase the budget a little bit, since they will benefit from the use of the equipment. He added that 2 million worth of goods have been exported this year alone, and although the product has been discontinued, 700,000 is too little. The only thing left to do is to stop negotiating. When Mr. On-song started to leave, the president stopped him. He asked why he was in such a hurry and looked upset. He also clarified whether production will indeed be in Korea and what the logo and model number will look like. Mr. On-song confirmed, production will be exclusively in Korea. The logo and model number can be customized according to the company's wishes. He explained that all this can be stipulated in the contract. The president thought the new model was completely different from the old model. They had no loyal customers. Even with production in Korea, it would be difficult to achieve a competitive price. He decided to approve the deal. Mr. On-song agreed, saying he thought the same, and began preparing the contract, asking the president to check it. He also asked if they have other suppliers of components for headphones from other factories. The president replied that they buy components for the headphones from a neighboring factory. Mr. Onsong asked if they could be introduced to this factory as well. After this successful transaction, Ji Hyuk discovered that SR Electronics had acquired licenses for many products in the same way. This created a win-win situation for all parties involved. Ji Hyuk benefited from the low cost, and the other party made an immediate profit. At that moment, his thoughts were interrupted by Sang, who entering the room. Sang Hu said that the Chinese engineers would be arriving soon. Ji Hyuk instructed Sang Hu to keep a close eye on team leader Beck when they arrived, especially how the machines there work. He emphasized paying attention to every detail so that something similar could be made later using the skeletons. Sang Hu assured that he would do his best. Ji Hyuk replied that the company relied on him for this. In his mind, he imagined that they were at the start of creating a product that was almost identical to the Chinese product. Naturally, they needed to capture the untapped Korean market first. A few weeks later, there was a supply meeting with the Chunwon store. Ji Hyuk greeted them warmly, expressing his pleasure at the meeting. The representative replied that he had heard a lot about them recently and was impressed with their innovative approach using skeletons. Ji Hyuk modestly replied that he was just lucky to be alert. The representative remarked that it was great to maximize one's potential, and asked if Ji Hyuk really intended to supply their store. He asked if Siren is only focused on shoes and textiles such as towels. Ji Hyuk asked if these goods are also manufactured in China. The representative confirmed that they are mostly. Then Ji Hyuk asked if there were any Korean-made goods. The representative explained, there are factories in Korea. Although their products are a bit more expensive than Chinese products, advanced automation makes them a good option. Ji Hyuk asked about the low-cost market. The representative replied that it is almost completely captured by China because of the high cost of labor in Korea. Ji Hyuk replied that he would add that to the list and get back to me once they start production. The representative took a moment to ask if Ji Hyuk planned to produce socks or bags, but Ji Hyuk answered in the negative. The representative conceded defeat by asking what product might convince him to supply their store. Ji Hyuk replied that he took orders without much thought, but will now show the product he had in mind. Ji Hyuk introduced electronic goods. The representative was both surprised and puzzled. Ji Hyuk explained that his surprise was understandable. They were really electronic products. Taking one of the items, Ji Hyuk mentioned that in Korea, it is sold online for 25,001 won, while the factory price ranges from 10,000 to 15,001 won. However, he offered to provide it to them at a much lower price. The representative asked how much lower Ji Hyuk planned to set the price. Ji Hyuk indicated that he would sell it to them for only 7,001 won. The representative, astonished, pointed out that online he would sell it for 25,001 won. Ji Hyuk confirmed this. But he added, the current product is Chinese and his product will be Korean-made. A representative asked if this meant there were no legal issues. Ji Hyuk assured him that everything was legal. The license to produce the product had been officially purchased, and all other products would be produced in the same way, completely legally. The representative admitted that after studying the products, he realized, low prices always have a reason. But here, the combination of quality and price was extraordinary. Ji Hyuk asked if the representative wanted to take a sample to test the product himself. The representative refused, saying it was not necessary, and asked that the contract be signed immediately. He then explained to Ji Hyuk that their company had been created through a partnership between Aeon Group and Japan's Bakken shops. He asked if Ji Hyuk would be able to supply products. Ji Hyuk happily agreed, saying that he was willing to discuss the terms of the contract immediately. He added that although it may not be known to everyone, he is very picky about contracts. The representative assured him that there was nothing to worry about as he had already gone over the details of the shoe contract in preparation for their meeting. Ji Hyuk expressed satisfaction, adding that they could save time and conclude the discussion quickly. The man explains that the Chongwon store was chosen to promote SR Electronics products because of its wide distribution network, allowing it to cover the entire country with affordable electronics. Guy emphasizes that this strategy will help the public appreciate the incredible value for money of the brand. Characters discuss the difficulties of exporting and advertising. Suddenly, the Shadow Demon's heir appears, offering to use him as a prize for the raffle. Ji Hyuk is considering the idea, suggesting that it would draw attention to the products and could stimulate demand by causing a stir. A man details the plan for a monthly drawing among SR Electronics customers, where serial numbers of products will be required to participate and the grand prize will be a shadow demon. The guy is sure that rumors about the lottery will spread on their own, increasing sales, and he will not need to look for customers. They will come on their own. The shot changes to a spot outside the store. The girl complains about uncontrolled spending at Qianwan's store and decides to buy only the planned items, avoiding impulsive purchases. The man responds by skeptically noting that such promises are often broken, but the girl insists on strictly following the list. A guy notices a noisy event outside the store entrance, and coming closer, asks a passerby what's going on. It turns out to be the launch of a new SR Electronics line, and a man studies the crowd, assessing the potential of the action to promote the brand. The girl reminds herself of the prohibition against spontaneous purchases. An advertisement for a lottery with a shadow demon catches her attention, but she resists temptation. The guy next to her shows a flyer offering to buy an item to participate, and the girl hesitates, remembering her promise. A man discusses the cost of the shadow demon with a coworker. He thinks it is too expensive, but tries to justify the purchase by the need to replace old equipment. The girl interrupts the argument by reminding them of the importance of budget and suggests they limit themselves to one item to test the lottery. The public's reaction to the action exceeded expectations. Guy analyzes the data, noting a sharp increase in interest in SR Electronics products. The man orders an expedited delivery to keep up the excitement and contacts the distributor, preparing new shipments. Ji Hyuk is discussing export details with his Chinese partner and insists on rush delivery to consolidate success in the market. Guy finalizes the negotiations, promises to report when the goods are ready, and plans to expand cooperation with other suppliers. Says about dialing him later on. The shot switches to a Chinese distributor inspecting the headphones. A man demonstrates an SR Electronics product, emphasizing its favorable price and quality. The buyer notes that similar Chinese products cannot compete on design. The guy notices the device's similarity to Inshu Electronics products and hints at legally using a license to copy the model. The seller confirms the acquisition of the rights from Inshu Electronics. Ji Hyuk explains that the identity of the design does not violate contractual obligations. The customer asks about the cost, and the man quotes a price of 12,000 won, mentioning the item's participation in a lottery. The buyer laughs when he hears the price and compares it to the original. Guy emphasizes that the raffle promotion is active for all countries. Mail adds that every product purchased increases the chances of winning, and the client recognizes the strategy's potential for increased sales. Ji Hyuk discusses the legal nuances of exporting with his partner and rejects the offer of exclusivity, insisting on mass deliveries. The guy argues that low price and high volume is the key to success, and the partner agrees on a fixed cost basis. Man offers an early market entry strategy for capturing leads and explains how aggressive production will increase turnover. The guy mentions dramatic growth in orders and using skeletons to scale, and the client endorses the plan, agreeing to cooperate. Licensor companies demand renegotiation of contracts due to success of SR Electronics. Inshu Electronics threatens to sue, alleging unfair advertising. Ji Hyuk instructs the team to resolve the conflict and focuses on expanding the product line despite market obstacles. Guy proposes to produce niche products, electronic scales and watches, that are less brand-dependent and have stable demand. Mail admits the difficulty in procuring components but is confident of profitability, mentioning the growing popularity of SR Electronics in China. Ji Hyuk insists on mass production and low prices, and announces a new Shadow Demon spoof to keep the hype going. The team prepares a live broadcast of the lottery, paying attention to the details of the design and transparency of the process. The guy talks about how the company's name is already known in China. The staff reviews contracts before airing. A man instructs the team, emphasizing the importance of accuracy in paperwork. The guy signals for the broadcast to begin, and the announcer welcomes the audience by announcing the start of the raffle from SR Electronics. The studio is finalizing the setup of the lottery equipment. Technical staff synchronizes timers and checks communication. Ji Hyuk is overseeing the process, controlling every detail, and is confident that the event will strengthen the brand's credibility. The host finally takes the microphone and welcomes everyone. The guy's still watching. He looks at his phone and realizes 100,000 people are watching the broadcast right now. The guy even wonders how the servers can handle that kind of stress. The presenter finally decided to introduce a new product. It's a giant mechanical cat. The presenter talks about how this is just exciting technology that will change the future. He begins to list the features of the new product. Also adds that they shouldn't be upset if they don't win this robot. But now the lottery is finally starting. A man announces the start of a prize drawing among SR Electronics customers, reminding us that even rare items increase the odds of winning. Ji-hyuk comments on the unexpected choice of a mini vacuum cleaner as a prize and emphasizes that owners of this model have high chances due to low sales. Guy declares winner number 4 to be a mini vacuum cleaner. A man explains that out of 40,000 units sold, only one will bring good luck. Ji-hyuk mentions that the odds of 1 in 40,000 are more favorable than a standard lottery, which encourages the audience to purchase the products more actively. The host encourages viewers to buy one SR Electronics product at a time to enter future giveaways. Guy notes that it is unknown which product will be the key product. Ji-hyuk praises the decision to hire a professional host and gives the signal to start choosing a winner among the 40,000 contestants. A man announces that the winner was an ordinary family father from Korea. The guy describes how an impulse purchase brought him good luck. Ji-hyuk analyzes the impact of the ceremony on brand image, noting that the increase in customer trust has exceeded expectations. Sales of the mini vacuum cleaner have skyrocketed since the prank. The guy notes that even new SR Electronics products have become more popular. Ji-hyuk jokes about the unexpected income that made him reconsider his retirement plans and mentions his army of fans. And he remembers his army of zombies. A man receives a request message from Udon Electronics. Guy specifies that the company specializes in climate control equipment. Ji-hyuk studies Udon's annual turnover data of 500 billion won and decides to schedule a meeting to discuss cooperation. The guy asks if the request is related to contract manufacturing, OEM, or license. The man admits that the details are not yet known. Ji-hyuk agrees to the talks, seeing the potential in them, and instructs the team to organize a meeting with the CEO of Urim Electronics. Ji-hyuk welcomes CEO Jin Ngi. Guy notes that rumors about SR Electronics business strategies have reached competitors. A man invites a guest into his office, beginning a discussion of a possible partnership and emphasizing mutual benefits. CEO Jin admires SR Electronics' lottery strategy. Guy recognizes that this approach has changed the budget electronics market. Ji-hyuk modestly replies that success is the result of analyzing demand and suggests pooling resources for expansion. A man describes the structure of Urim's factories, 2 in China, 1 in Korea. The boy wonders why high-tech products are not produced in China. Ji-hyuk explains that localization reduces costs. CEO Jin agrees, but mentions the nuances of quality control and logistics. A man explains the benefits of keeping a Korean factory for an image of reliability, and notes that rising wages in China are reducing the profitability of local industries. Ji-hyuk proposes to move Chinese facilities to Korea through a joint venture with Urim. The guy sees this as a chance to maintain his made-in-Korea status. Guy details the idea of combining low cost with the prestige of Korean manufacturing and suggests that Urim invest in building new factories. Guy doubts the complexity of the joint venture structure. The guy insists that this approach will protect the interests of both companies. He proposes to use skeletons as automated lines as part of a collaboration. The man fears a confusing distribution of shares. Guy explains that Saren will retain control of the technology and emphasizes that Urim will have exclusive access to the innovation. The man rejects OEM manufacturing, citing the company's principles. Ji-hyuk proposes an alternative, the integration of skeletons as independent units. Guy compares the system to the division of areas of responsibility and is confident that this minimizes conflicts of interest. Ji-hyuk describes the model of 1 factory, 2 companies. The man criticizes the excessive complexity and possible legal risks. Guy emphasizes that the scheme eliminates cross-shareholding and suggests starting with a pilot project to test the concept. A man asks about guarantees in case Saren withdraws from the deal. Ji-hyuk reminds him that the company has never violated contracts. Guy offers to spell out an automatic contract renewal if there are no violations, which reassures his partner and negotiations continue. Ji-hyuk insists on including an early termination penalty clause. The man agrees, demanding similar commitments from Saren. Guy offers mutual auditing of processes for transparency, which builds trust between the parties. The man mentions Saren's reputation as a reliable partner. Ji-hyuk confirms that all customers are only expanding their cooperation. Guy wraps up the discussion by suggesting that we move on to the implementation details. And the parties agree on the preparation of the final version of the contract. Ji-hyuk plans to expand partnerships after signing the deal. Man warns of possible job-cutting charges. Guy parries that the factories were originally overseas and suggests a meeting with the unions to prevent conflicts. A man expresses concerns about Urim's employee anxiety. Ji-hyuk agrees to discuss the issues with the labor team before the project starts. Guy suggests including unions in the bargaining process would help keep staff loyal and avoid public negativity. A union representative greets Ji-hyuk. The man is willing to discuss the terms of the contract regarding job protection. Guy emphasizes the importance of dialogue with employees and is sure that automation will not replace people, but will optimize processes. Ji-hyuk shows a contract guaranteeing production volumes and staff retention. The man is thankful for the transparent approach to negotiations. Guy explains the role of skeletons as tools to supplement human labor and emphasizes the mutual benefits to the company and workers. A man describes the benefits of bringing factories back to Korea, economic growth, and new jobs. The guy mentions protecting current employees through contracts. Ji-hyuk states that the capital relocation will strengthen the national economy and announces Saren's support for other companies wishing to bring back production. Guy urges foreign factory owners to get in touch with Saren. Ji-hyuk waves his hand, symbolizing openness to cooperation. Ji-hyuk signs contracts with Urim Electronics and 10 other companies. The return of industries to Korea strengthens the economy and attracts foreign investment. A man discusses positive economic forecast with the team. Guy is surprised by the news frenzy, but pleased with the results. The electronics industry complains of an uneven playing field for local factories. Ji-hyuk denies the claims, recalling their high margins. The man orders a public statement. Cooperation with foreign factories is excluded. He emphasizes the risks to the domestic labor market. Saren partners are asked for guidance on site selection for factories. Ji-hyuk suggests concentrating facilities in one region for synergy. The man notes that even the announcement of the choice of location will cause a stir among local authorities. The guy decides to act strategically. Ji-hyuk announces a trip to Gunsan. The man explains the goal is to create an industrial cluster similar to Pohang or Ulsan. Guy instructs the team to prepare negotiations with the city administration. He intends to strengthen Saren's influence in the region. Ji-hyuk's rationale for choosing Gunsan is proximity to the port, crisis zone status after KM Motors closed. Man sees potential for benefits. Guy emphasizes that the city desperately needs jobs. This gives Saren an advantage in negotiations. Kim is excited about his idea. And the protagonist smiles too, ready to begin. Ji-hyuk meets with the mayor of Gunsan. The man politely greets the guest, offering to discuss the terms of cooperation. The guy hints at the scale of the investment. The mayor is interested, but keeps a businesslike tone, preparing to bargain. The mayor lists benefits, 5-year tax vacations, loan guarantees. Ji-hyuk compares them skeptically with other regions. The man asks for more preferential treatment. The guy reminds that Saren will bring dozens of companies to Gunsan. Ji-hyuk points out that tax incentives are not the only criterion. The man mentions logistical difficulties and the need for infrastructure. Guy suggests that the mayor consider subsidies for employment. Negotiations move to the stage of detailed discussion. Ji-hyuk explains that using skeletons increases profits, but far limitations prevent expansion. The official doubts the fairness of the exemptions. The guy insists on the uniqueness of the project. The man agrees to consider raising the limit, but requires guarantees from Saren. Ji-hyuk shows a list of companies ready to move to Korea. A man is surprised by the scale and asks about the impact on the labor market in Gunsan. Guy assures that the cluster will create thousands of jobs. He emphasizes that this is only the beginning of a big project. The man is demanding guarantees that all Saren partners will be housed in Gunsan. Ji-hyuk promises mutual honesty, provided the mayor's support. Guy mentions annual revenue of 800 billion won from the first 10 companies. He emphasizes the long-term benefits to the city. The closure of the Urim factory in China and its relocation to Gongsan symbolizes the region's rebirth. A man recalls the city's past crises. The mayor states that Gunsen is now looking forward to growth. Guy notes that the project has already attracted the attention of investors. The man compares the current project to Korea's economic boom era. Ji Hyuk confirms that foreign companies are also moving to Gunsan. Guy refuses to give the exact number of participants, leaving intrigue. It hints at major announcements to come. Ji Hyuk announces 15 confirmed companies with a revenue forecast of 12 trillion won. A reporter asks about the share of human labor. Guy explains 6% of employees are human, but that number will grow as factories expand. He emphasizes the synergy of automation and jobs. The girl expresses fears about replacing humans with skeletons. Ji Hyuk parries, "You need specialists to operate the machines, and the office positions will remain." The guy jokes that it would take 200,000 skeletons to employ 10,000 people. He calls the project a win-win for Saren and Korea. Ji Hyuk assures that Saren will continue to attract companies to Gunsan. The man thanks for his contribution to the economy and asks about next steps. Guy declares that the city will soon be unable to exist without Saren. He hints at ambitious plans to transform the region. Ji Hyuk announces his intention to turn Gunsan into Saren City. A man summarizes the 3 months since Urim Electronics moved to Gunsan, noting that Saren is now headquartered here, with over 800 new jobs. Ji Hyuk shows off a list of partners selected according to strict criteria, and the guy is surprised by the number of companies, even after a rigorous selection process. Saren's first partners are showing steady growth despite competition among themselves. The man urges to look beyond the local market and focus on exports. The guy discusses the idea of including the partners' products in a raffle promotion. Ji Hyuk wonders about the source of the suggestion, but decides to ignore it temporarily. Rumors of the lottery expansion reach the team. A man suggests pretending that the information has not been heard to avoid controversy. Ji Hyuk is pushing for more partners, and the guy is supportive of the idea, seeing it as a financial benefit without significant risks. Suddenly, another guy comes flying into the room. Firefighters call for emergency assistance reporting a warehouse fire and injuries. A man demands details to assess the situation. Ji Hyuk responds instantly, ready to utilize Saren's resources, and asks about the scope of the disaster and the action needed. An emergency official confirms Ji Hyuk's identity. The boy remains calm as he awaits further instructions. The man briefly describes the criticality of the situation, emphasizing that Saren's help is the last hope of saving people. Firefighters explain that 5 people are trapped inside the burning warehouse, and the high temperatures and risk of collapse make entry impossible. Ji Hyuk suggests using skeletons. The guy clarifies whether it is possible to control them under extreme conditions. The man discusses the technical nuances, noting that controlling multiple skeletons simultaneously requires tremendous concentration, and the guy doubts the plan's feasibility. Ji Hyuk considers the alternative of equipping the skeletons with fire hoses, but the fire is too intense and time is limited. The guy reminds us of the strain on the psyche of mass management. The man recognizes the risk, but sees no other option because of the threat to human life. Ji Hyuk decides to take the helm, despite a long hiatus from hundreds of skeletons, and is up for the challenge. A man organizes a mobile surveillance system via skeleton cameras. The guy is handing out instructions to employees to install a special app. Ji Hyuk explains the scheme. Skeletons explore the building according to an algorithm, and firefighters are analyzing the broadcast to coordinate rescuers. Ji Hyuk gives command number 14, focusing on saving people and acting methodically despite time pressure and danger. The man switches to manual control for accuracy of operations. The guy coordinates the skeletons to break open the locked door. A man coordinates the actions of the skeletons. One clears a path, another tries to open a blocked door, and a third discovers an object under the rubble. Ji Hyuk focuses on simultaneous control, distributing tasks and ignoring noise, concentrating on saving people. He got a notification from which skeleton. He found a man inside a burning building. The guy looks at it in shock, not knowing what to do. The boy reports the rescue of one of the victims. The man orders to send free skeletons to search for the remaining ones. Ji Hyuk warns of the risk of the building collapsing again and speeds up the operation despite fatigue. Skeletons finds a group of people in a relatively safe area. The man is relieved to see that there is no threat to their lives. Ji Hyuk redirects resources to evacuate, and the guy reminds them that time is critical due to the instability of the structure. A firefighter thanks Ji-hyuk for the victimless operation. The man humbly replies that it's everyone's responsibility to help. The guy mentions that without skeletons, firefighters would risk lives, and Ji-hyuk nods, noting the value of the technology. The man discusses with the firefighter the advantages of skeletons, safety and efficiency, while the guy emphasizes that the cars take risks. Ji-hyuk proposes to implement a direct skeleton control system, and the fire marshal is interested, but doubts the budgetary possibilities. The guy offers a test partnership to practice the controls. A man agrees, seeing the potential to save thousands of lives. Ji-hyuk mentions that the success of the operation has attracted media attention and hopes for government support in the future. A firefighter is skeptical about the chances of state funding for skeletons. A man jokes that even shadow demons find it easier to find a budget. Ji-hyuk offers incentives for emergency services, and the guy notes that the cost can be reduced through mass production. A man assembles a team to announce the news. Guy intrigues his co-workers by mentioning a secret project with Ji-hyuk. A colleague enters the room ready to present an innovation and smiles, knowing his idea will change the way rescue operations are approached. The firefighters recognize Ji-hyuk as Saren the Necromancer. The man introduces him as a key partner in the development of new technology. Guy announces the presentation of the skeleton control system, and Ji-hyuk adds that this is just the first step to a massive change. He comes in and talks about how they did a very good job and apologizes for their mistakes. But now the sacrifices to help people are over. He represents the firefighter skeleton. A man demonstrates a fireproof chamber developed with a partner company. Guy explains that the device provides clear visibility even in fire conditions. Ji-hyuk shows off the fire-resistant shoes created with the participation of the Firefighters Association, emphasizing that this is only the first step in improving the outfit. The guy talks about a temporary solution with a modified commercial suit. Man announces plans to develop his own fireproofing kits. Ji-hyuk demonstrates the updated skeleton control system, noting that operations can now be conducted without his direct involvement. A man puts on a helmet synchronized with the skeleton's camera. Turning the operator's head instantly changes the robot's viewing angle. The guy controls the skeleton through the game controller, demonstrating crouching and grabbing. Ji-hyuk adds that there is a dedicated glove interface for delicate tasks. Ji-hyuk recognizes that learning how to use the system takes time. A man compares flying skeletons to piloting drones. Guy emphasizes that once skills are mastered, operations become intuitive and jokes that gamers will get by faster than professionals. Man announces donation of 30 skeletons to Gunson fire departments. The guy specifies that the service will be free. Ji-hyuk explains the motive, supporting those who protect citizens, and hopes it will inspire other companies to take similar steps. A representative of the fire department thanks for the generous donation. The guy shakes his hand, expressing his willingness to cooperate. Ji-hyuk watches the news of the tech transfer instantly spread in the media and is pleased with the public outcry. Experts criticize the use of untested skeletons in rescue operations. The man parries that public support outweighed skepticism. Ji-hyuk is disappointed by the silence of official bodies. Guy notes that the fire department wanted to implement the technology, but bureaucracy blocked the process. A construction company is interested in renting skeletons for facilities. The man studies the proposal, assessing the potential for application. Ji-hyuk asks clarifying questions about the scope of the project. The guy reminds him that the equipment needs to be adapted to the specifics of the construction site. A man explains that skeletons remain a tool under human control. The guy is showing off an updated model for cargo transportation. Ji-hyuk agrees to provide the equipment but insists on a commercial basis, offering flexible rental terms similar to heavy equipment. A spokesman for the builders is clarifying the details of the contract. The man draws an analogy with the classic rental of special equipment. The entrepreneur emphasizes that the cost will depend on the scope of work. The guy adds that operator training is included in the service package. A man discusses setting up a separate company for skeleton rentals, suggesting that his partner organize a firm to manage the equipment. Ji-hyuk agrees to provide the machinery on a rental basis. Guy emphasizes that it will make it easier to interact with construction companies. After Saren Rental opened, the number of people wanting to work exceeded expectations. A man attributes the excitement to the high unemployment rate in Gunsan. Ji-hyuk explains that the vacancies are temporary, but are paid daily. The guy notes the mistrust of applicants due to the lack of long-term guarantees. Ji-hyuk welcomes new employees by introducing the sarin rental concept. The man briefly describes the duties of skeleton operators. The guy demonstrates basic controls and promises training for anyone willing to adapt to the new technology. A man warns that working at sarin rental does not guarantee stability. Ji-hyuk compares the project to a temp agency. Guy encourages the audience to scrutinize the terms and conditions and emphasizes the flexibility of the schedule and the possibility of a quick start. Ji-hyuk presents the idea of human-skeleton symbiosis. The man explains that operators operate the machinery remotely, avoiding physical exertion. Guy invites volunteers to test the system and shows how skeletons perform tasks under the control of operators. A man vividly demonstrates the interaction between humans and robots. Ji-hyuk emphasizes that theory without practice is useless. Guy invites participants to try the controls and corrects their actions to help them master the interface. Ji-hyuk asks the audience about the perception of manual labor. The man notes that skeletons take on dangerous and heavy tasks. The guy draws parallels to transportation on skeletons and recalls that similar technologies have already been used in other projects. The man explains the payment system. The salary depends on the amount of work done. Ji-hyuk mentions that there were no layoffs due to lack of tasks. Guy acknowledges the difficulties of adaptation, but assures of the financial benefits and urges that the innovative approach be given a chance. Ji-hyuk concludes the presentation by opening recruitment. The man reminds them of the importance of safety at the facilities. The guy announces the start of practice sessions, and participants are assigned to groups to learn how to drive skeletons. At the construction site, the supervisor is surprised by the absence of workers. The man calms him down by promising the arrival of a new type of employee. The bus arrives with the operators and skeleton crew. The guy demonstrates how the technique gets to work without the physical presence of people. They're shocked at who exactly came to see them. The transporter shakes hands with the pro-slave and says he brought him 20 helpers. He asks what kind of bus, and the guy with the glasses says it's their work base. The guy says it's time to work, and the skeletons approach the workers for instructions. The worker explains this to the robot, though he's a bit taken aback. And they've already run to work on the construction site. One of them was quite tired and dropped his sack and cursed. A man receives a request from Jangwon Construction to use skeletons in Seoul. Ji-hyuk notes the success of the strategy but faces a shortage of trained operators. The guy instructs to send the machinery despite the shortage of manpower, mentioning that current employees are already engaged at other sites. Ji-hyuk analyzes the problem. It takes 3 people to operate each skeleton. The man recognizes that beginners will fail without additional training. Guy faces a staffing crisis for the first time and ponders how to optimize resources without compromising projects. The man suggests dividing the teams, experienced employees to be sent to Seoul and newcomers to the regions. Ji-hyuk agrees, offering extra pay for mentoring. Guy realizes that this is a temporary solution and emphasizes the need for a systematic approach to training. Ji-hyuk brings up the idea of creating a training center. A man discusses the difference between standardized training and full training. Guy insists on establishing a center that will train professionals from scratch, seeing it as a long-term investment. A man offers 100% job placement for graduates of the center. Ji-hyuk rejects the idea of paid tuition to avoid criticism. Guy agrees to charge for materials only, emphasizing that the goal is to attract talent, not to make money. Ji-hyuk orders the training center to be launched urgently. The man proposes to appoint Commander Beck as the project manager. Guy calls an emergency meeting, confident that Beck can handle organizing the training of the new operators. Ji-hyuk discusses current projects and rookie problems with Beck. The man notes that inexperienced employees are slowing down the work. Guy shares his plans to create a training center. Beck hesitates, but agrees to consider the proposal. Ji-hyuk offers Beck to head the training center. The man explains that his expertise is critical to the success of the project. Guy admits Beck prefers fielding, but insists his management skills are irreplaceable. The man discusses the structure of the center. Instructors must teach independently. Ji-hyuk asks how long it will take to prepare. Guy specifies that practice will require additional skeletons and is willing to commit resources, but requires a clear plan. Beck shares his ideas for optimizing the learning experience. Ji-hyuk listens attentively, encouraging the initiative. Guy approves the proposals, instructing them to start developing a program. confident that this will solve the staffing crisis. The man proposes to equip skeleton workers with additional manipulators, explaining that doing things at the same time will increase efficiency by leaps and bounds. Kid reflects on the technical limitations of current interfaces. The kid recognizes that hardware upgrades are required to implement ideas. Ji-hyuk combines a training center with a research lab. The man tasks the team with experimenting with algorithms to control the skeletons. Guy emphasizes that the freedom to develop combinations will accelerate innovation and hands over the leadership of the project to Baek Sang-ho, trusting his expertise. Baek Sang-ho marvels at the ability to create any combination of controls. The man recalls that the main task is to train new operators. Ji-hyuk jokes that Baek is ready to stay at the center forever. The guy emphasizes the balance between creativity and practical goals. A training and research center opens in an abandoned building on the outskirts of Gunsan. The man notes the excitement among those wishing to be trained. Guy is excited about the rapid enrollment of students, confident that the center will become a key link in training qualified personnel. Saren receives requests for skeletons for precision work. The man refuses, explaining that the brand focuses on simple tasks. Ji-hyuk reminds him that people should engage in fine-tuning. The guy instructs him to politely decline such offers. Man criticizes requests for specialized skeletons. Ji-hyuk confirms that Saren will not risk its reputation for niche projects. The guy orders to convey the company's position. Skeletons are for mass tasks. Humans are for detailed work. Suddenly, the door starts to open. Ji-hyuk announces Saren's monthly revenue of 300 billion won. A man proposes to reorganize the business into a group of companies. Guy is planning the official founding ceremony of Saren Group and intends to consolidate all areas under one management. Saren headquarters prepares for a large-scale event. A man celebrates employees' pride in the company's achievements. Ji-hyuk watches the hustle and bustle, satisfied with Saren's growing influence. The guy is confident that forming a group will strengthen his position in the market. The staff's enthusiasm was replaced by anxiety after the South Chungcheong incident. A man discusses the need for an urgent investigation. The secretary instructs the team to gather data on the incident. Guy emphasizes that Saren's reputation depends on transparency. The building collapse at the construction site is attributed to human error, not a skeleton failure. Ji-hyuk is pushing for a review of safety protocols. The guy rules out the possibility that technology is to blame for the disaster. A man demands more control over manual labor. The man explains that skeletons are able to quickly regain their balance even if their supports are damaged. Their design allows them to keep moving, minimizing downtime on the job site. Guy accentuates that the automatic stabilization system eliminates long lags, confirming the technology's reliability in extreme conditions. The operator claims he tripped by accidentally hitting the steel beams. The man expresses fear that such incidents could undermine the credibility of skeleton crews. Ji-hyuk demands urgent remediation and outreach, insisting that panic among customers and partners be prevented. Ji-hyuk orders the emergency skeleton camera footage to be retrieved for analysis, and calls the operator in for questioning. A man is reviewing the resume of an employee with 5 years of construction experience and training at Saren, which mentions a ceiling collapse incident that needs to be addressed. Guy emphasizes the completed training at the training center and asks questions about the details of the accident, trying to find the root of the problem. A staff member confirms that the skeleton's camera and head were destroyed in the collapse. The man clarifies whether it was possible to recover data from the damaged chip. Guy doubts the absence of other skeletons at the scene of the accident and demands a recheck of the circumstances to rule out mistakes. The operator insists the skeleton inadvertently hit the steel beams. The man expresses disbelief, emphasizing the seriousness of the consequences of the incident. Ji-hyuk demands a detailed account of the operator's actions, suspecting that the story may have been distorted to cover up irregularities. The man suggests that the situation was faked. The guy demands proof, despite the operator's assurances of truthfulness. Ji-hyuk pressures the employee, threatening an investigation, intending to find out if the accident was the result of sabotage or negligence. The guy states that skeletons physically cannot fall down on their own. The man suggests that the operator try to tip the robot manually. Ji-hyuk demonstrates the stability of the skeleton, proving the absurdity of the version about an accidental fall, and demands a review of the testimony. The man is allowed to use whatever tools he wants to try to bring down the skeleton. The guy watches the cameraman's unsuccessful attempts. Ji-hyuk records that the robot maintains its equilibrium even under aggressive impact, which supports his theory of external interference. Guy points out the inconsistencies in the cameraman's story. The man emphasizes that the skeleton could not have fallen without the use of supernatural force. Ji-hyuk hints at possible sabotage and instructs the team to check all systems for hacking or manipulation. A man demonstrates the skeleton defense mechanism by clutching an apple in his hand, and explains that the robot doesn't destroy objects thanks to built-in safety constraints. Ji-hyuk emphasizes that even at maximum strength, skeletons will not cause harm, ensuring the safety of operators and others. The guy denies the version about an accidental impact of the skeleton on steel beams. The man accuses the operator of lying, recalling the robot's all-round vision system. Ji-hyuk threatens to check the data from the cameras embedded in the skeletons, confident that the recording will prove manipulation of the facts. The man shows the cameraman the footage from the external cameras that shows his face during the incident. The guy reveals that he monitors all activities through hidden systems. Ji-hyuk presses the cameraman, demanding a confession and hinting that he already has evidence of sabotage. Guy mentions the possibility of recovering data from a damaged skeleton. Guy admits that the process will take time, but threatens the deterioration of the operator's reputation. Ji-hyuk offers one last chance to tell the truth, emphasizing that dragging out the investigation hurts all parties. Guy realizes he's been caught and prepares to tell the truth. The operator shifts the blame to the construction manager, accusing him of negligence. The man demands proof, pointing to the destruction of the skeleton camera. Ji-hyuk suspects collusion among employees and insists on questioning the manager to find out the details. A guy offers to cooperate with the operator in exchange for mitigation. The man promises to simplify the investigation on condition of honesty. Ji-hyuk pressures psychologically using fear of publicity and seeks to close the case quickly to protect Saren's reputation. A man meets with the operator to discuss the details of the transaction. The guy expresses suspicion of ulterior motives for the meeting. The operator asks direct questions about involvement in the accident, trying to figure out if the customer acted alone. The guy dismisses the possibility of evidence because of the lack of cameras at the site. The man reminds us that the cameraman is the only witness. He demands an explanation of how the plan was to cover up the collapse. Suspecting that the incident was part of a larger plan, a man asks about a sudden meeting, suspecting financial fraud. Guy denies self-interest, citing concern about the consequences. The customer interrupts the conversation, sensing resistance, and warns the operator to continue the investigation. The man panics and asks who ordered the sabotage, suspecting Saren is behind the actions, and demands an immediate explanation. The guy denies the company's involvement, but the operator insists he's in touch. Tensions are rising, threatening to escalate into open conflict. The operator is reminded of the 80 million won received and given an ultimatum to cooperate or return the money. A man blackmails him, linking him to the consequences for his reputation. Ji-hyuk is not directly mentioned, but his influence is felt. The guy tries to keep his cool, but the pressure builds. The possibility of tampering with evidence is discussed. The man doubts the skeleton's black box, suspecting Ji-hyuk's bluff. Guy notes the contradictions in the CEO's words and suggests we agree on a version of events to avoid exposure. The cameraman realizes that he was misled about the camera data. The man admits that Ji-hyuk manipulated the information for pressure. The guy is at a loss to ask for further action, hinting at the need to urgently find a way out of the situation. The man offers to analyze both scenarios, with and without evidence. The guy interrupts him, calling anxiety a waste of time. Ji-hyuk is not present, but his shadow hovers over the dialogue. The cameraman is lost in speculation, adding to the atmosphere of paranoia. A timestamp of 19 minutes appears on the screen, indicating that the conversation is being recorded. The man remains silent, realizing that everything said is being recorded. Ji-hyuk discusses the need to harmonize positions and create a record to buy time by offering to mimic Han De-yoon's demands for additional payments. The man mentions the possibility of an increased reward if successful. The guy skeptically notes that the recording makes the plan useless. Ji-hyuk proposes to stage a massive distraction. A big conference meeting is gathered, and they are getting ready to cut the ribbon. And cut. The hall filled with applause. Ji-hyuk thanks for the support, but expresses alarm over the skeleton incident, demanding that journalists be allowed inside. The man insists on the publicity of the investigation. The guy emphasizes the connection between the incident and the company's reputation. Ji-hyuk mentions shocking accidents involving skeletons, emphasizing his efforts to integrate robots into society in the presence of safety systems. A guy wonders about the cause of the incident. The man states that he has found suspicious parts and offers to examine them together. Ji-hyuk cites the threat of mutual destruction, mentioning the imminent launch of a construction project he has invested in. The man demands to fix the problems at any cost, promising guarantees for the future in return. Guy remains neutral as he analyzes the conditions. Ji-hyuk denies the accusations of lying, acknowledging the lack of validity of his statements, and plans to formally request and sever ties with Taeyu Construction. A guy criticizes his opponent for intending to introduce a blacklist. A man shows determination to protect the company's reputation. The old man doesn't understand how this happened. The man ignores extraneous calls, focusing on the main dialogue. Ji-hyuk states that the current events are only the beginning. A brief rejoinder emphasizes his confidence in the further development of the conflict. The man does not develop the topic, leaving the threat unresolved. The guy registers his intention to continue the confrontation. Ji-hyuk accuses Executive Kim of negligence, linking the series of accidents to his projects, and warns of risks to the company's reputation. The guy demands an explanation, reminding of the consequences of new incidents. The man pressures the perpetrator using fear of exposure. Ji-hyuk asks about the reason for canceling the meeting with Chairman Han. The man is annoyed with his decision, believing it to be final. Guy wonders why Saren doesn't replace all workers with skeletons and criticizes his opponent's pliability in the face of pressure. An old man notes the growing demand for skeletons in the construction industry. The man doubts the competitiveness of companies using human labor. Guy points out the cost savings at Bo1 Construction and emphasizes the need to adapt to new market conditions. He demands to recognize the fact of ordering sabotage during the investigation. The man denies involvement, citing the actions of managers. The guy mentions 15% as a key argument in negotiations and hints at hidden financial fraud in contracts. Ji-hyuk gets a short response from Chairman Kim. The man limits himself to a formal agreement, avoiding details. The guy ignores the incomplete dialogue, focusing on the next steps. He does not comment on the scrappy nature of the conversation. The entrepreneur is faced with incoherent notes of associations and sudden alerts. The man ignores the chaotic phrases, focusing on the threats. A man discusses the recommendation to look at Bo1 Construction. The man attributes their success to a 15% cost reduction. Guy expresses disappointment at being denied a meeting with Chairman Khan and admits his error in assessing his character. He explains Saren's strategy to promote skeletons. The man notes the benefit of reduced costs and deadlines for contractors. The guy doubts the fairness of the competition, emphasizing that Saren monopolizes the market through control of technology. The old man discusses the inability to compete with Saren because of the 15% savings. A man offers to meet Chairman Khan in person. Guy insists on preserving the consortium, promising to find a way out. He avoids open conflicts, opting for a diplomatic approach. Goggle states his willingness to temporarily postpone the decision. The man mentions the importance of family, but the context remains unclear. The guy ignores abstract phrases, focusing on practical arrangements. He does not develop the topic of personal relationships. Ji-hyuk limits himself to a brief agreement without details. The man ends the dialogue, leaving the questions unanswered. Guy doesn't comment on his opponent's brevity. He switches to analyzing the next steps in the negotiation. Gigi asks the old man across the street, what brings him here? He said he came to apologize for his son and his shenanigans towards the company of Messrs. But Ji-hyuk looks at him with suspicion. He doesn't believe his heartfelt confession. Ji-hyuk apologizes to Chairman Han for the incident his son committed without his knowledge, emphasizing that he would not cover for a relative and would demand answers. The man rejects legal prosecution but insists on professional sanctions. Ji-hyuk demands proof of his opponent's ignorance of the incident and is pushing for the firing of Executive Kim and his team. The man expresses doubts about the honesty of the promises, recalling instances of delinquent employees returning. Guy is keeping a tight rein on the ground. Ji-hyuk announces a lifetime blacklist for Executive Kim and his connections. The guy questions the excessive severity of the punishment. A man interrupts the discussion by pointing out the prohibition for Kim's family to participate in the company's affairs. He leaves no room for compromise. Ji-hyuk recalls that the incident could have resulted in casualties and offers Chairman Han a choice: a stern warning or a complete boycott of Taeyu construction. Guy agrees to maintain personal relationships but cuts professional ties. Guy emphasizes the need to isolate the perpetrators. Ji-hyuk agrees to his son's expulsion from the company, avoiding the family's persecution, and confirms participation in redevelopment, but rejects the consortium. Mail reports immediate personnel purges at Taeyu Construction. Guy records the elimination of all potential threats. Ji-hyuk fulfills his promise by taking Taeyu Construction off the blacklist and inquires about Chairman Khan's son's future actions. A man reports the creation of a rival company by his son and his allies. The boy is ordered to destroy the new business. Ji-hyuk discusses the introduction of skeletons for firefighting with firefighters, emphasizing the company's growth through increased robot shipments. The man mentions preparations to create an undead army. Guy ignores the mystical references, focusing on business strategy. Skeletons are trained very hard, and they're clearly fighting hard, but they don't follow through at the last minute. The protagonist records the testimony in sheer excitement. But suddenly he got a phone call. Guy discusses the characteristics of a Death Knight suitable for the project. She takes a final look at the final pack of orcs. Ji-hyuk explains the difference between the regular skeleton and the enhanced version. Restored vital energy, emphasizing the potential of such models for practical application. A man is considering monetizing improved skeletons. The guy suggests using them as bodyguards, noting the benefit of their strength. Ji-hyuk studies the Royal Guard team, pondering the commercial use of skeletons. He sees them as a tool to make money and protect himself. The guy ignores the mystical subtext, focusing on business strategy. The man does not comment on the details of the page, keeping a businesslike tone. Ji-hyuk analyzes the demand for bodyguards among the awakened, but notes their reluctance to limit growth, highlighting the contradictions in the profession. The man ignores philosophical musings, focusing on market opportunities. The guy doesn't mention the personal ambitions of the awakened. Ji-hyuk suggests dispersing undead bodyguards for emergencies, seeing it as a chance to gain the support of influential people. A man discusses the creation of defense units instead of combat units. The guy ignores the technical notes, focusing on influence strategy. Ji-hyuk receives a request to develop a medical corps, but hides his true goals under the pretext of public safety. The guy doesn't go into detail. Ji-hyuk orders to use any method to achieve the goal, without regard for ethics. The man confirms his willingness to act tough. Guy avoids moral evaluation, fixing only on the fact of the order. He does not develop the topic of the permissibility of methods. The guy bursts forward right at the skeleton, and he manages to hit that block. Ji-hyuk shows Chairman Han a skeleton bodyguard, emphasizing its protective functions and denying the creature's martial purpose. Guy questions the appropriateness of giving up attacking capabilities. Guy ignores technical nuances, noting market potential. Ji-hyuk introduces the skeleton as a D-rank bodyguard, capable of standing up to the awakened, and plans to release models by rank. Mail criticizes the lack of combat features, but recognizes the demand for the product. Guy captures the commercial benefits of the strategy. Ji-hyuk explains that the mass introduction of skeletons to hunt monsters will cause the awakened to protest. He avoids the conflict by choosing the niche of bodyguards. The man agrees with the logic but does not comment on the long-term consequences. The guy focuses on current challenges. The young lad doubts that our protagonist is of such high rank. He asks his student to focus on the experiment and move on. Ji-hyuk explains the complexities of the job. He mentions society's fear of the awakened capable of crime. A man talks about the Yurion Group chairman's trauma of being kidnapped as a child. Guy emphasizes his obsession with safety because of past experiences. A man discusses the departure of a park supervisor who wants to grow into his 40s. The guy offers a pay raise but is turned down. He agrees to stay temporarily until a replacement is found. He expresses concern over the loss of Chief Park leaving the team with low-ranking bodyguards. The man insists that a replacement is urgently sought. The guy agrees to stay late despite his fatigue. He ignores the emotional notes, maintaining a businesslike approach to solving the problem. A couple days ago, Guy is faced with bodyguards refusing to work because of restrictions on his freedom. A man proposes to increase the number of low-ranking employees. He's focusing on a practical solution, hiring more guards. He receives a message from Chairman Han Ji-hyuk offering to help him find a bodyguard. The man agrees to contact despite his doubts. The man demands that the chairman be contacted immediately. He shows him patience by insisting on being personally involved in the negotiations. They're meeting and shake hands. The guy in white asks, what did he mean by the word bodyguards? GH tells him not to worry and to just follow him through. The man focuses on discussing the skeleton as a bodyguard. The guy doesn't comment on the crypto inserts, switching to the gist of the dialogue. He avoids mentioning advertising details. Ji-hyuk presents the skeleton as a bodyguard, denying its combat purpose. He offers a demonstration of strength on the F-rank awakening. The man doubts the effectiveness of the skeleton, but agrees to the test. The guy ignores the technical explanations and says he's F-ranked. He talks about rewarding the one well if he can break through the skeleton's defenses. They were all a little scared. Still, the skeleton and the rank and file got into a fighting stance. They're starting to fight the energy. The small type is turning out to be very chipper and quickly goes behind the skeleton's back. He's ready to kill him now and stabs him in the back. Ji-hyuk completes the test attack, noting its failure and lack of reward. The man does not develop the topic, switching to the next tasks. Ji-hyuk demonstrates a skeleton bodyguard, emphasizing its protective functions and lack of needs. The man emphasizes the impossibility of betrayal. The guy ignores technical terms, capturing only the key benefits. He does not mention the philosophical aspects. Ji-hyuk expresses confidence in his safety thanks to skeletons. The man doubts their ability to replace the outgoing Park's chief. The guy mentions the availability of B-rank models. Ji-hyuk claims that 5 B-rank skeletons can resist the A-rank awakened one. The man agrees to test the theory in practice, and he clearly shows it. Ji-hyuk explains that skeletons don't have attacking abilities, but can hold back targets. A man offers to do an anti-rank test. The guy's thinking about this confrontation. Ji-hyuk agrees to risk breaking skeletons for the sake of valuable data. A man expresses apprehension about their numbers. Ji-hyuk promises to restore the skeletons in case of injuries. The man removes the restraints, allowing full attack power. And a fierce battle ensued. Fire energy was everywhere. Ji-hyuk watches the skeletons blocking attacks that would be deadly to a human. Guy records the effectiveness of the defense, but doesn't comment on the physical limitations. He focuses on the results of the tests. They push him further away from them. The guy is in complete shock at their power and effectiveness. He doesn't understand. Are they really just skeletons? The guy's getting ready to attack. Runs around them like a flush. Activates a hard fireball. And the skeleton is still holding Mr. Gus like a baby and running away from a rank-and-file kid. Ji-hyuk completes the test, noting the activation of the skeleton's emergency mode. The man expresses surprise, but doesn't delve into the technical nuances. Guy ignores questions about the mode's functionality, switching to analyzing the test results. Ji-hyuk explains the emergency evacuation protocol when a VIP's life is threatened. The man recognizes the underestimation of the power of A-rank awakenings. Guy agrees on the effectiveness of skeletons against threats below the S-rank. Convinced of the effectiveness, he is no longer asking for 5 but 7 skeletons. The protagonist says, yeah, it would be a good deal. And the rank instructs the director to ensure the safety of the chairman. The man assures the reliability of the measures, avoiding unnecessary details. The scene changes and the man smokes a cigarette. A guy proposes to carry out an intimidating action against the chairman of a conglomerate. The man doubts the safety of the plan. The guy reminds us of the customer's connections within the conglomerate's family. Ji-hyuk reassures the team, citing insider information. Mel notes the weakness of the guards after the high-ranking ones leave. They're getting ready to get in the building before the flashers go off. The guy's already looking for a way to get in there. The man is rebuked for not notifying the completion of the operation in a timely manner. The man avoids making excuses by switching to analyzing mistakes. What he saw shocked him. He gets confirmation of the validity of the information. The man focuses on operational data without being distracted by extraneous elements. He immediately punches someone in the SWAT team. It analyzes the attack level requirements, indicating the need for a B rank or higher. The man ignores the cryptographic symbols, focusing on tactics. After the punch, he sees the suit is filled with skeletons, not people. It scares and surprises him. The scene flies away from the action. A news anchor discusses the successful repulsion of an attack on the chairman of the Urium group by skeleton bodyguards. A man notes the growing popularity of sarin technology. Ji-hyuk is on the phone with his deputy at the time. Ji-hyuk offers B-rank skeleton rentals, but faces limitations. A man expresses interest in building an A-rank model. Despite the risks, Ji-hyuk announces plans to take the S-rank test and increase production of B-rank units. The man agrees to wait for his decision. Ji-hyuk is annoyed by the repeated calls, but he agrees to a meeting. The guy's fixing a need for action. Ji-hyuk agrees to take the awakened man's test on Sunday. The man promises to prepare everything necessary for the procedure. The guy ignores emotional remarks, fixating only on agreements. He doesn't mention past delays. The interlocutor thanks him and asks him to prepare whatever is needed. The protagonist is not exactly thrilled with this dialogue and suggestion.